welcome to this week's live stream of It's a Fandom Thing. I almost said this week's live stream of Moonlight. Oh. That's what we're covering, but it's not, we're not called Moonlight.
Hear us cry in real time.
Yeah. But we are kicking off our celebration. Hi, Bailey. We are kicking off our celebration of Pride Month with a discussion about the movie Moonlight. So this is going to be heavier than probably last week's episode live streams, especially than the Bridesmaids one. But before we get started, first off, I'm putting in the comments here. If you want to, and I'll keep commenting on it as viewers grow, but if you want to play along with our bingo, there's only been a couple of edits here. I added in there. If Carla does any kind of impression, or if Carla sings. I don't know if we'll get any of those, but those are new things added on there.
That's starting to feel like that might be the free space.
I know. Well, I was going to put the free space being Pride because this is our kickoff to Pride Month.
Yes.
But yes, I was like, no. We'll leave it. We'll leave it right now. It's still tangent. It's still the free space because it's pretty guaranteed there will be a tangent.
Yes.
So we are going to have, a great discussion tonight. We're going to have great discussions coming up this whole month. I'm just going to quickly go over. I'm going to quickly go over what we're going to be discussing this month during Pride. Next week, we are going to, on the next episode after this, that's not a live stream, we're going to be talking about Brokeback Mountain. So it's going to be another very light conversation. Not at all. I've been watching that before we did this, so I'm a little bit like,
I feel like a lot of this is going to be Erin is sobbing month.
Exactly. It's going to be me sobbing this month. Yes. Probably not when I'll probably sob when we discuss Schitt's Creek. What am I talking about? But we're going to be discussing Brokeback Mountain on the next episode. Our next live stream, we're going to be talking about George Michael. And we never get to talk about musicians on here, which is very weird. I mean, we talked about Elton John last year, but it's weird since Erin loves music so much. So for this one, I was like, we've got to get a musician. And so we are going to be talking about George Michael. That is going to be a ton of fun. Yes, Bailey. The week after that, our live stream is going to be discussing a fanfic, which is something very different that I never thought I would do, but it fits with what the show's about, I guess. So we're going to be discussing the fanfic 91 Whiskeys, which is a Destiel fanfic, Dean Cass from Supernatural. So you have a couple of weeks to read that fanfic. It's one that Carla and Meg, who are going to be on, only like just a teeny weeny bit.
It's okay.
Carla never mentions it. That should be one of the bingo squares. Actually, I don't think it's really been brought up that much on here, but
no, it's just we talk about it so much to you, whether you want to hear it or not, on any platform in which we share communication.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah. So look for that. And then the week after that, we are still working on it. So hoping, fingers crossed. Also, if you know any local drag queens local to Colorado that might want to be on here, even if they're not local to Colorado, that's perfectly fine too, since and if they're fine doing a live stream, then they can contact me. And then we're going to be talking about various other things that aren't going to be on the live stream. So we're also going to be revisiting Schitt's Creek and revisiting Queer as Folk. We're going to be talking about Orange is the New Black, which I have a lot of opinions on that show that aren't positive. Warning. Lots of them. I never finished the show, so I'm finishing it right now because I was so angered by that show. So warning about that. But I don't know if my guests are going to feel the same way. And then we're also going to be talking about RuPaul's Drag Race, which is another show that I have never watched. So I'm watching that too. So it'll be a really interesting, fun month, I'm hoping. So I'm hoping everybody will love it and get excited by it. If you have any George Michael songs that you want to give a shout out, that you want us to shout out next week, please DM us. You can put them in the comments here and hopefully I remember to write them down. But just, contact us about that and that'll be cool. Okay, so Carla, tell me, what are you into right now in pop culture?
I am very into Lucifer's season 5 part B, which just dropped on Netflix, except for the musical episode. But look, it's not because it's bad. It's because it's very, very bad. Other than that, I totally loved it. It was fantastic.
So I didn't think I'd get to watch Lucifer for like a month. I was like, I'm not gonna be able to watch this. And if you don't know, Lucifer is our most popular episode of this show. And Queer as Folk has been competing for taking over that number one spot. I'm secretly, even though I love Lucifer, I'm secretly hoping it does it by the end of Pride Month. But anyway, it's been competing, but every time it gets close, it's almost like Lucifer knows. And all of a sudden, Lucifer will get like a bunch more listens. So it's very funny. But
I mean, you're up against the Prince of Darkness. So like, I think you're asking for a lot.
I know. I'm like, okay. And we've done 2 Lucifer shows. I don't know if we're going to talk about this one just because our schedule is so crazy. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet. If people really, really want us to, let us know, and I'll try and squeeze in a time where we can just do a live stream discussing it. Probably not an episode necessarily, because those ones always end up being very long. But anyway, but I did end up watching a couple episodes, and I strongly disagree with Carla. I think the musical episode was amazing. I laughed so hard during that episode and then the episode following it, but I laughed so hard. I thought it was really entertaining. It was what musical episodes of shows like that should be, which is just totally ludicrous and ridiculous, and it doesn't fit, but it fits. So I actually liked it. I don't know how I'm feeling about this season so far. It's kind of for me, but I've already been spoiled by what happens in the end. So I already know what happens in this season.
I haven't gotten to the end yet, but my thing, okay, I love how they went about it because I thought that was really interesting. I really liked their explanation for, why it's working out that way, but it was the singing that wasn't good. Like, other than Tom Ellis, I'm so sorry, it was pretty bad to listen to. Like, if you like listening to music, if you like listening to music and you prefer to listen to good singers.
Wow. That's what I liked about it. So it's that they worked. By the way, we've already had Queer as Folk mentioned. So, that'll be mentioned a lot this month probably. So go ahead and mark that one as done. And fanfic has been said too. So go ahead. You've got fanfic and you've got Queer as Folk. And I don't know if Bailey's playing along. I know she said she's going to be right back. So we'll make sure to tell her that. But those are the ones that have been said. Hopefully I'll remember to keep track of these. Apologies in advance. Okay. What I'm into, sorry, I haven't said what I'm really into because actually it's not Lucifer. What I am into is the Friends reunion. I watched it last night, and I am Jennifer Aniston because Jennifer Aniston cried a minute in, and I cried a minute in. And I kept crying. I mean, they had these people talking about how Friends has like saved their life, literally. And I started bawling. And but if people know me, they know I cry very easily. So this is not necessarily saying that it's emotional, but it is emotional. So it was fun. So that's what I'm into. Okay, so we're going to get into Moonlight now. And I just want to say, and I've said that there will probably be mentions of homophobia. We are not going to be using that word on this because we do not have the right to use that word. So we will not be using the F word on this. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. I don't permit that. That's not allowed. But this movie does have some homophobia in it. So we will be probably talking about that. If that's triggering for you, self-hatred, self-loathing, abuse, neglect, drug use. Those are all topics that are discussed in this movie, so they may come up in here. So if those are at all triggering for you, just a warning about that. There will probably be trigger warnings for Brokeback Mountain as well, for sure, for Brokeback Mountain. So, okay, so let's get into Moonlight. So Carla, did you first watch this when it was out in 2016 or later?
I did. So, okay, so my mom is in AARP. And they have access to movies, so they'll get, passes to screenings of movies. And usually I'll go with her or my other sister will go with her. So she's like, oh, hey, they're screening Moonlight. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah. So we go. And of course, like, we're both having like this emotional experience in this movie theater. And we're both like, ah. Yeah. So I did watch it back when it came out. Is the point.
Yeah, I did too. And it was a really interesting experience because, it comes out I watched it pretty closely after the election in 2016. So everything, felt and still does very tenuous at that time and very weird at that time. And it was very interesting to watch this movie in particular when the fact that the person who had been elected is a racist and is homophobic and is every kind of phobia out there and is just a horrible, despicable, awful person, and all the people that around him and people that voted for him and all that kind of stuff. So it was really even more emotional, I think, watching it at that time. And so that just, I don't know, compounded on top of it. But I was really excited to watch it just because I had been hearing everything about it. And it plays also into my Gindi. What is Gindi? I don't know what Gindi
What is that?
I was trying to say Indie. I don't even know where that came from. I don't even know where that came
I was like, is it a new color? Because it sounds like it would be a really hot color. Like, I'm really into Gindi. Show me a swatch. What's the Pantone number?
There's our first tangent, but that's our free space anyway, so that doesn't matter. I don't know where that even came from because all I was going to say is I'm an indie geek. Maybe I was combining the G with the indie. But this movie plays into that, and I like really depressing, very dark stuff. I just do. Maybe it's because I don't know. No wonder I cry all the time. But I really like dark stuff too. So I was just really excited to see it. It's one of those that I watched the trailer over and over and over again. Listen to interviews with Barry Jenkins and other people involved. And it was just, I don't know, I was very excited, but it was a very, very heavy emotional experience. The closest one to it that I've had recently was watching Waves, and I know Bailey, I don't know if she's back on, but Bailey was watching this last night in preparation because Bailey is amazing. And she said that this is a movie, where you have to stay till the end of the credits. And that's the way I felt too. And that's the way I felt watching Waves as well. So it's that kind of same kind of heavy feeling. So yeah, I saw it in 2016. I was blown away, just absolutely blown away by everything about it. Yeah. And especially the characters. I think the characters are so well fleshed out and so well rounded. And of course, you see them through different stages of their lives, especially, of course, Chiron, which we're going to talk about Chiron and his different iterations throughout the film, starting when he's a kid all the way up to when he's an adult. And of course, these are all broken up into chapters. And so you've got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So we're going to focus on those. And we may end up just going and adding in the characters while we're doing the different chapters. So let's start with chapter 1, Little, which is a nickname that Chiron has as a little boy. So what were your thoughts on Little?
Well, first, I just want to say that it was amazing that they found 3 actors playing this one person who could all act in such a perfectly in sync way to where it doesn't pull you out of it to say, oh, well, this is a different actor now. This is a different character. No, you can tell that there's continuity of spirit throughout the entire film. And part of it is because all of the actors have this manner of communication, because Chiron is a very quiet character. Most of his acting comes through his body, certainly his eyes. Definitely, that's how most of the emotion, most of the story that he's telling is conveyed. So, again, the fact that they found 3 actors who could pull this off so seamlessly is just amazing. And it speaks well of the actors and also of Barry Jenkins as a director, that he was able to evoke the same spirit throughout. But Chiron himself, you see him and you just want to hug him and keep him safe. And that's one of I don't think that ever really goes away. Like, no matter where he is in his life, there's never a point at which you're really like, I don't like this person. No, you feel for him. You feel like, why does he have to go through all of this? Because he goes through a lot, and from a young age, like he knows exactly what his life is about at a very young age. He's the first time that we see him, it's just after Juan finishes up a drug deal, because he's a drug
Mm-hmm.
dealer in the neighborhood. And so you come off this scene of Juan making a drug deal, and then he just happens to look up, and there's a little boy being chased by other boys. And that's how you're introduced to Chiron. He's running away from a pack of kids calling him a horrible homophobic slur. And you can tell that it's not the first time. You can tell that this is something that is just part of his routine. He's not exactly, he's not, because he is small, compared to the other kids. He's a small kid. And you find out that that's why they call him little. And so you're already set up to kind of cheer for and fear for him. So he's running all over Liberty City, finds an empty apartment building, hides in one of the apartments, and just waits it out. And Juan comes and gets him, because the way he sees it is like, this kid needs help. He needs to know that somebody's in his corner, that he's not alone, that somebody can care for him. Like he really puts his heart out there for Chiron. And, he tries to take him home. He feeds him at a fast food restaurant, then takes him home, because the kid won't tell him anything. He won't tell him his name. He won't tell him where he lives, nothing. He's perfectly happy to go with this guy because this guy is feeding him and he's being gentle with him. And then when he gets to their house, he meets Teresa, who is just wonderful to him. But you barely know anything about him at this point. You haven't heard him even really speak. But there's a weariness that feels so much older than he is, because he's like 10 years old, and that weariness is just so much older than him. And you can see that, eventually you meet his mother. You can see that she's succumbing to a drug addiction and not making the best parenting choices when it comes to Chiron. He has it very hard at school because of the bullying. He makes a friend, which is wonderful, but it's that tenuous childhood friendship where you're not really sure, like, are you really my friend?
Mm-hmm.
How much can I trust you? So in that first part, but it's still my favorite part of the film, my favorite act of the film, because there's so much hope in it. The scene where Juan takes Chiron to the beach to teach him how to swim it's definitely like my top two scenes. I can't tell whether it's like one or two, but it's in my top two scenes. Because it's so Barry Jenkins called the scene a moment of spiritual transference, and he calls it a baptism, and that's exactly what it feels like. It's this tiny moment in which we see all the love and tenderness that Juan has and his desire to teach this little boy to survive, to fend for himself. And it's particularly interesting because he's trying to save him from the world. And then eventually Chiron comes to find out that Juan is part of this world that's making his own life more difficult, because the drugs that he deals are drugs that his mother ends up consuming because they're all part of the same chain. But that scene at the beach, he teaches him how to swim. He's carrying him in the water. They finish their swim lesson. They're just sitting at the shore, and Juan tells him that he knew that this old woman back in Cuba who would say that black boys in the moonlight, they look blue. And then he tells him, at some point you have to decide for yourself who you're going to be. And first of all, like the poetry in Black Boys in the Moonlight, they look blue. And then telling him, giving him this hope. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment in the movie. And for me, I just love looking at Chiron, looking up at Juan. But that all of that kind of ends abruptly when Chiron is at Juan's, and he's just been through another ordeal with his classmates. His mother has just called him that horrible slur too in their house. So he runs to Juan's and asks Juan and Teresa, what is, this word that they're calling him? Now, the beautiful part there is that Juan tells him it's something that people say to gay people to make them feel bad, which is the best thing you can say to a kid, because it doesn't say, well, it's because, gay people are bad, therefore, da da da. It takes all of that, it takes that burden off of Chiron. It's like, it's not the person on the receiving end, it's the person who was saying it that's wrong. But then Chiron asks him, do you sell drugs? And Juan just kind of goes still, and he's like, yes. And then Chiron says, and my mother buys drugs. So he's making this mental connection himself, and then he gets up and he leaves. The devastation in that scene in Juan's face when he's like, because he's known all along. I mean, he himself confronted Chiron's mother for drug use, but the devastation on his face when he's confronted by Chiron himself, by the product of the life that he's putting out into the streets. Wow, it's amazing, really, the acting and the blow to your heart after all of this like hopeful, beautiful, poetic stuff that's going on.
Yeah, that's I think the best scene in the whole movie, all of it, because even though it's really heartbreaking and it's devastating, it starts off so beautifully because it's basically like, and we're going to get into Juan more as well. We can even start talking about him now too. But Juan is such an interesting character because usually when you have drug dealers in a movie, the drug dealer automatically is going to be portrayed as this very evil, awful person, and that they're cold and they're hard and they have no heart and they don't care about people. And that's not who this person is. He happens to be a drug dealer, but that doesn't define him. That doesn't take away his humanity. He still has humanity there. And you can tell that in the way that he takes in Chiron, and he wants to care for him instantly and wants to protect him instantly. And so then you have this scene where you have this young kid asking, if I am this slur word, if I am this, and then having someone say no and saying you might be gay, but you're not this, because this is a hateful word that is used by people who have hate in their hearts for people because they can't understand things or because they're just hateful, horrible, homophobic people. So making that distinction and not having every single person in his life call him that slur, or having every single person in that life judge him. And for a movie to take a character like a drug dealer that you see so stereotypical in things being the person who would use that slur all the time, and to have that character be the opposite was so incredible and so amazing and such a beautiful, wonderful choice. And I know a lot of this movie is drawn from personal experiences. I know both Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney, who we should really, really, really give a big shout out to here, who this was an unproduced play. It won prizes that he made. He wrote this play. And some of this is from his own life, from his struggles growing up with the mom that he did. There's a wonderful interview that if you search on Cherry Gross with Barry Jenkins and Terrell McCraney, and it's just a wonderful, beautiful interview. I know I shared it with Bailey, and I know Bailey listened to it earlier, and it's just a great, great companion piece to this. And that's why they gelled so well, is they had some of the same experiences, both of them. But that's why it was so great to not play into stereotypes, to buck those stereotypes. And yeah, like Bailey says, I sobbed for Chiron to have such supportive adults in his life from such a young age. Yeah, and it's sad that it's uncommon. It's also sad, though, that he had so many things that counteracted that. And so even though he had that, he still had so many things pushing against him and abusing him and hurting him, that it made it all the more tragic that he could have had this amazing, supportive life, but he also had other things that were just pushing against him. And to me, the character, and I agree, I think Little is also my favorite chapter. I think all the performances are great. I think the performance in chapter 2, I think Chiron in chapter 2, that's my favorite performance, actually, is the teenage version of him. They're all great. And it's amazing because Barry Jenkins wouldn't let any of those actors meet each other because they wanted them all to be organic, which makes it even more amazing because they all do the same kind of look with their eyes. And the same kind of haunted, lost, lonely. They're so lonely. He's just such a lonely character who, and we'll get to the ending scene later because I don't want to talk about it right this second, but who just craves affection and just needs some kind of affection, some kind of love. I mean, you have the scene in part 1 with his mom just standing there yelling at him. You don't hear the words, and he just stands there kind of looking down and kind of like shell-shocked and almost like he's in the eye of a hurricane, and this hurricane's just whipping him around and beating him, and he can't escape it. And it's something that kind of just characterizes his whole life, is having to be in that. And he's such, watching him is like, it's like watching a wounded animal having to go back. And I don't mean to say, but like when you see like a bird who has like its wings clipped or something like that. I don't mean to like, but that's just kind of it's just like some kind of wounded, open walking wound, a person that's walking around with like an open sore, and everybody keeps pouring salt into the wound.
Yeah,
it doesn't get a chance to heal.
More like a slap from somebody that you didn't expect it from. Because, yeah, his mother may be neglectful. She may be addicted to drugs. But up until this point, she hasn't been directly awful to him. You know, she isn't shown to be like a particularly warm mother or even a particularly present mother. But up until that point where she takes her frustrations out on Chiron. And this is, this comes off the heels of her being lectured by Juan about what a bad parent she is. So, and she goes back to the car and keeps getting high with her boyfriend, and encounters Chiron at the house. And that's when you have that silent scene where you don't see what she's saying, but you can definitely make out a word, that homophobic slur, as she's shouting at Chiron. And then the next thing is Chiron asking Teresa and Juan about that word. But it definitely, as awful as she has been up until that point, this is like an escalation in her terribleness as a parent, because now she's like directly pulling him down by her own hand. Because I don't know, it's hard to really state it very clearly, just that neglect is awful and it is part of abuse. But it's almost worse when the parent that you wish would be there for you actually looks you in the eye only to tell you that you're awful and that you're a burden of some kind. So that's what it felt like, just like a betrayal on top of a betrayal.
Yeah, and I'm not even just talking about his mom when I say that with pouring salt on the wound. I'm talking about everybody around him except for Juan and Teresa. Although when Juan does say he does sell drugs, so he's contributing in some small manner, he is contributing to the thing that is keeping his mother at a distance, and that's how it's viewed. And Juan hates that he's doing that, and that breaks his heart. So it's almost like he's got that one, the person that he looks up to as a father figure, as someone who can care for him, who shows him tenderness right from the get-go and accepts him and isn't going to call him that homophobic slur. And then he's also got this woman who's not going to call him that. And then to find out that they might be helping to contribute with the fact that his mother isn't really there is like just more salt on that wound. He's just like this walking wound. And it's so hard to watch because you know how beautiful he is. You can tell how beautiful and sensitive and sweet he is. And, you know, I think a lot of times when you have somebody who is shy and quiet and doesn't speak a lot, doesn't talk a lot, your instinct is there's a lot of different ways. Just you can either, as people can push them, bully them. People can think that they're not as strong or as amazing as they are. People can think they're really innocent the innocent people that they don't ever have, I don't know, don't ever think big, not big, what am I trying to say? That they don't ever like do anything that's outside of the quote unquote goody thing. And so it's very hard to be a person who is shy and who is quiet. And then if you also have on top of that, you don't have anyone that's showing you any kind of affection until you meet Juan and Teresa. And so you've got all these people that are kicking you around and pushing you around, and you already feel so different. I mean, he already is struggling with the fact that he feels different. And one of my other favorite scenes, though, is the dancing scene when it's just him when he's dancing, because you see this moment where it's like, oh, I'm a kid, I'm free, and I'm expressing myself and just spinning and spinning and spinning. And it's absolutely so beautiful. I just want to read what Bailey said about the mom. I think the fact that he stays with her through the second chapter supports the fact that it's a slap from someone you weren't expecting, quote unquote. He stayed with her because he cared. Did she? Yeah, I think he definitely cared. I think, yeah.
He definitely cared, but moreover, what options did he have?
Yeah, that too.
He's a kid living in poverty. The system is not designed to care about kids like him. He's a Black kid. You know, this isn't a system that's like, oh, we're sorry that you're living in a neglectful, drug-filled environment. Let us place you somewhere better. No, I mean the options are not good for black kids, particularly Black boys living in those situations. It may have turned out worse for him, frankly. Not to say that this isn't awful, but like it's not like he had a wealth of options. I think even if Teresa and Juan had been willing to, you know, attempt to adopt him or something, how does that work when he's a drug dealer? It's not a matter of him choosing to stay with her, although he does love his mother. It's a matter of him having no choice. And that's one of the themes that plays throughout this movie, is that how much choice does he have in how his life goes? Juan is telling him, like, you need to choose who you want to be, but how much choice does he actually have in the matter? So, and we'll get into that more when in the teenage, in the second part. But yeah, it's he undoubtedly he cares about his mother, and whether she cares about him or not is frankly irrelevant, because at this point she's dealing with an addiction and she's not prepared to cope with being a parent. And yeah, like I said, it's not like he's not a blonde-eyed he's not a blonde, blue-eyed little girl who will probably be adopted quickly if he were to go into the foster system. It's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's living in a city that is Liberty City is known to be one of the poorest cities in the country. And I know when they filmed it there, they filmed it in Liberty City, and everyone there, because of the way that that city is treated and kind of left behind and thought of as quote unquote trash, because that's the way people think a lot of times, they were very, very, very reluctant. They were very weary, but they got used to it. And I know, can't remember which actress it was who said it was one of the most amazing filming experiences, because once the residents of Liberty City went, okay, this is okay. They're not here to trash us. They're not here to make us out to be scum or make us out to be less than or anything like that, like other people might have, or this isn't going to be like a white savior type movie or something like that. That she said it was the most welcoming and wonderful experiences she's ever had making a movie.
Right.
So yeah, so that's another reason. And of course, I mean, there's that one documentary on Netflix about the boy who was so physically tortured until he was died, and how he had people involved. People were called, people were notified, and no one did anything. Nothing was done. And our system is so messed up. And yeah, if you are not a pretty little white kid, no one's going to give two craps about you, sadly. So
No,
they wouldn't have, yeah. And
especially in an already overwhelmed and underserved community like Liberty City. I mean, there's this notion that, okay, well, if things get bad, well, just call the police and they'll save you from it. Or if if your kid is being mistreated, call Child Protective Services and they'll take care of them and really treat them well. And oh my gosh, I wish that were true, but it is absolutely not. And heaven forbid, the one takeaway that still doesn't seem to have sunken in for a lot of white people is that the police, the Child Protective Services, a lot of these institutions in which we place a lot of faith are not designed to serve Black people. They will, in fact, sometimes go out of their way to do the opposite. Or in the case of, with CPS is also partly because they're so overwhelmed and understaffed. There are people who genuinely want to do good things for people, but it's a bigger discussion than I think we could really cram in here. But I think it would be nice, is all I can say about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to point out another thing that I was looking at the trivia. It's kind of another way of going against stereotypes. Is you see guns occasionally in this movie, but you never once have a gunshot. There's never once gunfire. There is some violence in this movie, of course, but there's never that. And that's pretty incredible when you have a movie where you are featuring a drug dealer and where you're featuring a drug addict, and it's an all Black cast, and you don't ever have that. That's pretty remarkable, which goes again to, but the reason it's remarkable and the reason it was probably done is because you have a Black director, you have a Black writer, when you have that, once again, you have to have that representation so that the true stories can be told, and so that it's not all stereotypes. I know when I saw this, 90% of the audience was white that I saw this with, and it was a packed theater. So, which is, so that's good though, because because that's the thing, is you have to support this. You have to support these movies. And we'll get to the fact that this won Best Picture and how remarkable that is, even though I'm not saying that it changed anything, because it didn't, but it still was remarkable. Yeah. And Bailey, sorry, I was reading a comment here. So Bailey was saying that she's had white family members who have called police and CPS who who have called police and CPS on several times over the years, and they never lost their kids. If anything, the systems left the kids worse off. So I can't even imagine. Yeah, it's just a messed up system, and totally something that we could do a whole episode on that. That would be totally separate from this because it is a messed up system. You could even do movies that cover that or TV shows that cover that system and how false it is. Or even when a kid gets adopted, it's not always going to be the perfect situation or fostered. Everyone knows there's tons of abuse in that too. So yeah, it's a pretty messed up system. So let's go ahead, and I want to briefly, before we move on to chapter 2, to Chiron, which is the title of chapter 2, I want to just briefly touch on Kevin, because Kevin is another constant in Chiron's life. Kevin is the only person when he's little, and of course we're going to talk about the heartbreaking thing that happens in chapter 2, but he's the only person in his world of kids that you see, at least, that actually likes him and actually tries to be his friend. So what were your initial impressions of Kevin?
I really, my heart broke in the Chiron portion of the film, the teenage portion. But initially, he's just another kid, and he just sees Chiron as another kid, and he tries to help him by saying, you're a soft guy, and I get that, but you can't let them see it. You have to be able to stand up to them, So he and he's like, I know that you can, because Chiron always he runs away. Which, you know what, I'm not blaming him. It's like several dudes against him, and he's a small guy. But Kevin offers to like fight him. He's like, hey, let's fight. Let's see what you got. So they fight, and Kevin's like, wow, you're actually pretty good. And so they're like, okay, let's go. And so as kids do, they go off and race each other. And it's very sweet. But I think that there's a lot of playfulness and sweetness in Kevin. And at the same time, there's a desire to fit in. Mm-hmm. Kevin is somebody who I think that Kevin is somebody who is probably bi or pan, but he's definitely not straight. That's my thought. I don't think that he's straight either. But because he's also attracted to girls, and he knows that it's more socially acceptable to sleep with girls, to be with girls, that's what he gravitates towards. And he's also he's one of those kids who can go and sit at any table that he chooses. There are some kids out there who are just chameleons, who can just, go and hang out with anybody and anybody will accept them. So, and I think that that's great for him. But, as we'll talk about, it does end up being something that, because he doesn't want to lose that status, he would prefer to do something horrible rather than to lose that status.
Yeah, and you think on the onset in the first chapter and through most of chapter 2, actually, you think with Kevin that he is like the one that is so confident and sure in himself that he's okay, and he won't judge, and he'll embrace Chiron, and he won't be like the other people who are picking on him and bullying him. And then, of course, it turns out differently. And I think that's very true of a lot of young people who are questioning their sexuality or questioning and if they already fit in, it's very difficult for them to feel like, oh, it's okay if I am a little bit different, because then maybe I'll lose that status and I won't be able to just easily hang with anybody that I want to. And I think that's where he comes from. And when we talk about chapter 3, Black, we'll talk a lot about the fact that he's very different. He's still the same, but he's very different, and because of certain experiences. But yeah, because when you first meet him, you're like, oh, finally, he's got someone in his life. And you think that even through most of chapter 2, or at least I did, where it's like, well, at least he's got Kevin. At least, I mean, his age group and his group of peers, at least he's got that. And then that gets ripped away too. So it's very, very heartbreaking. It's interesting because watching this movie and then watching Brokeback Mountain, I had no idea really in my mind, not even thinking about it, since Brokeback Mountain was like 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years from, not 10 years ago, but it was 10 years from before Moonlight. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out my words there. I couldn't think of the word before, obviously. But there are actually some similarities between the character of Ennis in Brokeback Mountain and a Jack Twist in Brokeback Mountain with these two characters. It's funny because there are a lot of similarities in some respects, where because Ennis is a very, very quiet character as well, very repressed, extremely repressed, and Jack Twist, on the other hand, doesn't seem to be that way. Although he's got some sides that are like that too. But so it was very interesting to watch this today, since I hadn't watched Brokeback Mountain in probably 10 years, honestly. And watching it right after I'd watched Moonlight again, I was like, oh, there are some similarities here. So I just wanted to say that really quickly because it's really hitting me now that it's interesting that we're covering two of these, because that wasn't even in my thought process. I was just like, these are two very important movies dealing with repression and homophobia and gay men trying to beef out and not being able to do it.
But I think that also speaks to how universal the experience is
exactly.
of not being able to come out. And, you have like all kinds of personalities in any community. But I think that when you factor in that you have to hide part of who you are in order to just like make it through the day without getting beaten up, a lot of people will react similarly across, in this case, across movies
and decades. That was the other thing that struck me, because Brokeback Mountain is the 60s and this one is more present. It's pretty much present day. It's like, what does it start in the 90s? I can't remember the exact year it starts, but it's more present day than Brokeback Mountain is. So that's the other thing that's striking, is it's the same struggle decades later too. So yeah, but I just wanted to mention that because it was just really hitting me now when we're talking about it, and especially because I also wasn't thinking about it because you've got adults and then you've got teenagers, but it's still the same kind of struggle for sure. Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to chapter 2, which of course is titled Chiron. And this is Chiron in high school and as a teenager, and some of the same struggles, and very painful chapter. Some beautiful moments, but painful. So what are your overall thoughts on this chapter?
We move on from the childhood and him being called little and into his teen years, and really nothing has changed for him when we move into this, other than things getting kind of worse, because he's still lonely, he's still too different, he's still living with his mother. Her addiction has worsened to the point where when we saw the first chapter, Chiron walks in one day and the TV is gone. So now they moved into a worse apartment, into worse circumstances, because his mother is like, she's just so high all the time that she can't even really keep anything straight. She's shaking him down for money, which Teresa helps him out, gives him money now and then just so that he can, eat a hot meal sometimes. And while he has become a regular at Juan and Teresa's, Juan is gone. And we don't even find out directly. It's just like a passing mention that Juan has died. And so his father figure is now gone. He doesn't have that same, because Teresa's fantastic and everything, but it's not the same as having Juan. Even though, when we left off chapter 1, he's upset at Juan, and at Teresa he walks out, but he still was part of his life. We don't find out what happened to Juan. So it could be any number of things, but all we know is that he's gone. So like that anchor that he had, he no longer has. And now he realizes that he's attracted to Kevin, that he wants Kevin. And they have this beautiful moment at the beach together. He has his first kiss and his first sexual experience with Kevin. And that's the first time that we see Chiron smile. It's the next
Mm-hmm.
day, walking around school just with his little smile on his face. And he doesn't look quite so haunted in that moment because all the way through, he just looks like he's constantly checking his back and constantly living under a cloud. But for one moment, he has that bit of happiness. Um, and this is where we have what we were alluding to earlier with Kevin, because Chiron is being bullied, particularly by this one kid Terrell, who just goes out of his way um, to be awful to him and to physically bully him. And so then Terrell goads Kevin into hitting Chiron, which is awful to watch. It's really awful to watch. But then Kevin is telling Chiron to stay down because he doesn't want to hit him. He's his friend. This is like the day after they had that sexual encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell that he cares for him. He doesn't want to do this, but he's still doing it because he doesn't want to incur Terrell's wrath and possibly, be outed, possibly just a lot of things that are not excuses, but they're reasons why he beats up. Well, he doesn't even beat him up. He punches him a few times, tells him to stay down. But what happens when he stays down? Terrell and his friends viciously attack Chiron. And all that Chiron really wants is to be left alone. He just wants to be able to walk around with his head held high, to just be who he is. If he can do without speaking to anybody, I think he would be perfectly happy as long as he could just be left alone. But after this, it gets even worse. The I don't know if it's the principal or the guidance counselor or whatever
Mm-hmm.
encourages him to press charges against these kids. He doesn't feel like he can do that. And I mean, there are a lot of reasons why you might not feel that you can do that. There's the stigma of being a snitch. There's, he knows what can happen to a Black boy who was started on the path of the school to prison pipeline. And more importantly, he doesn't want to do that to Kevin, because as much as that's a huge betrayal from Kevin, he still doesn't want Kevin to end up in jail or worse. So he decides not to do it, and he goes home and he decides that's it, that he's going to do something about it himself. He can't do anything through the authority, so he's going to take matters into his own hands. He walks in with a determination that we've never seen from him before. He takes a chair, immediately walks up to Terrell and just hits him until Terrell is on the floor, not moving. And yes, it's self-defense, but that's not how anybody's going to see it. Moreover, again, we're dealing with a Black teenager who is never seen favorably by an authority. And of course, he's carted off in handcuffs, and Kevin's just on the sidelines, like in disbelief that it went that far. But it's a scene that's heartbreaking on so many levels, because he had to take matters into his own hands because he's protecting Kevin. I think more than anything, he's protecting Kevin. He's also angry that he's been powerless all of this time, all of his life, constantly being picked on and bullied. And this was, the last straw. He sees himself in the mirror and thinks, okay, is this how I want things to go from now on? And it's not like he's going to be pulled aside and taken to intervention and be scolded and, maybe suspended, expelled, anything. No, it's directly to prison, and there's no in between, because that's, think about how many times a black child has been called, a black man on TV, or like this, lurking black dude. They don't care about who he is. They don't care about what happened the day before. None of that matters to a lot of people. It's just, he's a threat. He must be neutralized. And that's how a lot of black kids are seen. So, and that whatever he may have wanted for himself, whatever Juan told him about, you have to decide who you want to be, it's bull. It's a lovely idea, but black boys don't have the luxury always of deciding who they want to be and then be able to pursue that, because the system is designed to keep them down and to make it so that they can't, like once they get out and they have a record, for example, like who's going to employ you? Like how are you going to rise in a company? How are you going to, just a lot of questions. So in the third act, we see like a lot of the outcome of that, but those were the things that swirl around in your mind when you're just watching the movie and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, here's the thing. I'm thinking to myself, like, that's kind of the end of the story, because I know what happens to black, indigenous people of color, particularly to black people, and particularly to black men and black girls, black boys and black girls in this, that they're criminalized in a way that their white peers probably wouldn't be. We've like the world is replete with stories of how this works afterwards, and it's heartbreaking and it's awful. But for me watching this, like, I knew the next quote unquote natural step, but I suspect that probably some white people in the audience may have been like, oh, that's awful. Like, what happens after his court case? What happens after his lawyer gets him off these charges? Because clearly it was self-defense. No, that's not how law enforcement works. That's not how these things work. So yeah, those were my thoughts on the Chiron chapter.
And I'm going to quickly go to a couple of things that Bailey has been saying in the comments first before I go over my thoughts, which I could also just say ditto, but I have some other things I want to mention. But Bailey says, in that interview that I pointed out, the Terry Gross interview, which really it's a really, really good interview. They say how the man Juan was based on dies. But Bailey thinks it is important to his character that we don't know. And that's very true. And it's important that we don't see that. It's important that we don't actually like see his body. We don't see like an act of violence that results in his death. Like, once again, like I said, you never have a gun fired or shot at all. And that's very important to this story.
But also, I just want to say that it's also because Black men also die of cancer and heart attack.
Yeah, that too. Mm-hmm.
So like, it's the thing of like, it doesn't really matter how he died. It just matters that he did.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see a movie about a Black man dealing drugs, like, oh well, he's probably shot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, he may well have been. It could have been anything else though.
Yeah, and I mean, if it had been done a different way or done by a different director, but it would have been that. It would have been he went to prison and was in prison and he was killed in prison or something like that. That would be what would have happened. But it's important that we don't see that we don't know that it could be any reason that he died. He could have gotten sick. He could have been in a car accident. He could have been any number of reasons, however we die, I mean, people die of so many different reasons. So who knows why or what killed him. And that is a good thing to know, is that we don't know how he died. We don't know what he died from. We don't see him die. That makes the fact that the movie is already so tragic, it's almost like it doesn't want to go into tragedy porn, because it easily could have been like a tragic tragedy porn is what I kind of call it, where it's like, okay, we're going to get off on more tragedy happening. And it's just I'm very grateful that that didn't happen. I also want to say if this movie had been done by white people, the characters of Juan and Teresa, with the way they're characterized, would have been white people. And you would have had white people stepping in to save Chiron. So it would have been a little bit different, I think, in different hands. That's why, once again, it's important that it's not done by white people. And then also Bailey says that when Kevin was beating Chiron was the most heartbreaking part of the story. Yeah, I remember you tweeting no last night, and I was like, I bet she just got to that part. I pretty much was like, yep, that's probably the part that she got to. And it's true. That's a very hard scene to watch. And when you watch that and you see how Chiron is determined not to stay down, it's almost like, okay, this is my moment of standing up for myself. Even though you are going to hit me, I'm not going to give you the privilege of seeing me back down. You're going to have to face the fact that you are willing to do this to me when you just showed me that affection just the other night, and now you're going to punish me for that affection, and you are going to go back on everything I thought you were, and you're going to betray me in this way. No, you're going to have to deal with that, and I'm not going to just lay down for you. And that's why I think that was so important that he stood there. It made it more painful, and it made it more painful for Kevin, but that was the point. And that was really the breaking point for Chiron. If that hadn't happened, and then of course what happens after that, we wouldn't have had what happened in chapter 3, because I think that really is what breaks him. And then of course the scene where he is soaking his face. And one thing I'd written down was there's a lot of scenes after that where you see him constantly putting his face in something cool or in water. Like you'll see him in chapter 3, he like even puts his face like in the freezer briefly, like he kind of just, not like in all the way in, but he opens it, like when you're trying to cool down. And he does that a lot, or he's constantly like, putting water on his face. So it's almost, I wrote down, not sure what that was supposed to necessarily symbolize, if it was even kind of some kind of other kind of baptism, or if it was a way of waking himself up or cleansing himself or something like that. But it's just interesting to me that after that, it continues on, and you see more scenes of him doing that throughout the rest of the movie. But yeah, that was such a heartbreaking scene, and what followed. And then Bailey said when the adult at school was saying the things like, we've all been there, she felt that was so disrespectful, because she certainly has not everyone has, quote unquote, been there. And yeah, that's true. And then what's also so heartbreaking about that scene is you see Chiron break down there and really start to cry and just be like, you don't know, you have no idea, you don't know what it's like for me. You don't know. And she doesn't know. And nobody really knows in this movie what it's like for him. And that's the saddest part, is he's so alone. He's just so lonely. So yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a movie that I think everyone really should watch. It's not the easiest movie to watch, but I think it's a very important movie to watch. Yeah. So, okay. So let's move on to the final chapter, which is titled Black. And what we didn't mention in chapter 2 is Black is a nickname that Kevin actually gave Chiron. And that's what Kevin calls Chiron. And so let's talk about that. What are your overall thoughts on this final chapter where we get to see Chiron as an adult?
It's fascinating. It's like a full circle moment. And this is what Juan didn't want for him. Mm-hmm. And this is what Juan was trying to lead him away from. But again, once he picks up that chair and Terrell's on the ground, and you know that he's about to be arrested and taken off, and he's not going to have a lot of options after that. There's not a lot of mercy for Black men in general, let alone when they have a record. So we're introduced to Black in this scene where, like you said, the first thing is he's waking up from a nightmare about that moment with his mother in the hallway. And like you said, he sticks his face in a sink full of ice and water. And that's, I think he's come to see that as a comforting thing. Like, yes, it
Mhm.
helped him, when he was just beaten up and he was trying to get down the swelling in on his nose and his eyes. But probably one of his best moments in life was that swim with Juan, and that freedom that he felt, because that's what Juan really wanted for him. He wanted him to have freedom. He wanted him to have choice. So I think it's like a little bit of reliving that moment of freedom where, you can just get your head underwater, feel like you're just you. Like no matter what anybody else wants to think or say about you, you're just you in that moment. It's just you in the water, and it's beautiful and a perfect moment. And also the comment about um, black boys in the moonlight, the fact that it was said to him at a beach. There's probably like a lot of comfort that he takes in something like that beyond the you know the getting down your eye swelling and closing your pores, because if you want to close up your pores, that's a really good idea. But it's more that comfort, that and that memory and that closeness to Juan. But then we see a lot of similarities between him and Juan at that point, because he was he was the one adult in his life who really tried to save him, and yet he ends up walking a lot of the same footsteps. He's wearing, his durag exactly the same way that Juan did. He's driving exactly like Juan drove. He even has that Crown air freshener in his car exactly like Juan had. Um, the way that he's different from Juan is that he is alone. He doesn't have a Teresa counterpart. He doesn't have really anybody. He's also different in that he's harder, or at least he tries to um, have a harder presence. Because even Juan with his dealers was he was a good manager, if you want to put
Yeah,
it that
he
way.
was. He was. He was a very good manager.
Yes, like he asked about your
He was
family.
kind.
Yeah, he was kind. He probably would have offered a 401k and benefits if he could have. but, but you
Paid
get the
maternity
sense,
leave, definitely.
right?
Paid paternity leave as well. Yeah.
Yes, well, depending on he doesn't discriminate in his hiring of
Yes.
dealers, probably didn't. But Black, which is what he's calling himself at this point, um, he's different. He menaces his dealers. He scares them. He's purposely keeping people at bay now, where before it was incidental because he was different and he was picked on, and his mother didn't really want him around and he didn't really have anybody. Now it's purposeful. Now it's like, I don't want anybody near me. He's getting um, that peace, those moments to himself by force, by making it so that nobody wants to be close to him. He's fine with that. And even his mother, he's kind of hands off, and she's in a nice facility. She's she seems to have gotten to the point where she can be sober. Um, when she started actually doing, or at least trying to do right by him, um, when he left juvie, she moved him to an area where he could get away from all of their previous influences. But still, again, what does he know? What trade can he work in that he knows, and that he has somebody who was a mentor to him? Well, that's drug dealing. So that's what he's doing now. Um, and out of nowhere, Kevin calls him. He's just living his pared down life where it's just him and occasional calls from his mother, insomnia leading to intense workouts in the middle of the night. Kevin calls him, and the acting in that moment, in that scene where he's just this
Mm-hmm.
hard guy trying to stay aloof and just trying to stay alive by staying aloof. And he suddenly, he shrinks down into the young boy and the teenager that he was. And oh, like, oh, I got tears in my eyes watching that, because he's still deep down inside that soft person who just wants to be touched by somebody who loves him and who cares about him and who really sees him. And that person was Kevin, the same person who basically helped in ruining his life. But all he thinks of at that moment is that this is Kevin, who he has probably been thinking about on and off for all of these years since he last saw him as a kid. And then it seems like his only thought is, I have to drive down there. He's living in Atlanta. He drives down to Florida, which, let me tell you something about driving from Atlanta to Florida. Florida is the most boring state to drive in because it's all straight roads, nothing to look at. We don't have mountains in South Florida.
Is it more boring than driving through Kansas? Have you ever driven through Kansas?
I've never driven through Kansas, but I'm willing to bet it's more boring than driving through Florida, because you have awful drivers and nothing to look at. Yeah, like, you're so far from the beach. There are no scenic views. So he's willing to take that awful drive down to Florida just to see Kevin's face. And it's like, it almost feels like a fanfic moment, where the guy who's been often brooding and he's been hurt, and he just suddenly reconnects with his one true love. And so he drives all these miles to meet up with him in the diner where he now works, because Kevin works in the diner. Kevin was also put through the school to prison pipeline. He was also imprisoned for some BS. And while there, he learned to cook, and that became his thing. So now he's cooking at this diner. And Chiron, when he gets there, he pulls up with his blaring music and his big car, and he gets out and he's like, yeah, I am a big, tall, and tough man. I am very strong, and I'm going to make myself look extra nice for this boy who's had my heart all of this time. And it's really endearing because he's so shy and he's so awkward, and he has all of these awful words to say to his dealer. And he walks into that diner with nothing to say other than, yeah, and I guess, or, just, so that really just, that softness is still in there. It's thrived, and it's survived all of these awful things. And it's just beautiful to see. But one of the things that I don't want to miss mentioning is that the incarcerations are mentioned in passing, just as Juan's death was. And it's because in Chiron's world, and in the world of many young Black people, incarceration is almost as much a part of life as death. So it's, call it tragic, call it sad, whatever, but it's awful, but it's also a specter that's always kind of there. But as like, we'll discuss the final scene later, but as far as, well, when we're talking about Black and his not reconciliation, but his tentative relationship with his mother, he's finally gotten to the point where he's old enough, big enough, and not so scared to be alone, that he can put the distance between himself and his mom. It's something that he couldn't do when he was younger. It's something that he's doing now. And yeah, it may hurt Paula, but frankly, like, what can you really expect after you have done all of this to your son? Like, you put him in harm's way repeatedly, and you can't expect him to just embrace you and be like, oh, Mom, I've always loved you. Because guess what? He has. He's not going to express it now, maybe in the way that you want him to, but God, like, don't have so many expectations for somebody whom you've treated awfully in the time that they were most in need of you. He was a child. He was a kid. He was being bullied. He needed his mother's attention and comfort, and that was not happening for him. So, as much as I, as a mother, understand that she wants that forgiveness and she wants that relationship, she really needs to take a couple of steps back and be like, okay, on your own time.
Yeah,
I
she
will
hasn't
do my
earned
best.
it yet.
No, she has not earned it. You know, an apology does not mean that you're immediately entitled to the forgiveness that you want. But as for Kevin and Chiron, it's a very kind of cute, almost rom-com kind of meetup when they're in the diner together, and Kevin plays a song that, of course, now I didn't write it down, so of course I can't remember it. I'm sure you remember what it is. Or not.
I failed at that too. I wrote down the song, but then I failed it. I was like, I've got to remember to write down the name of the song. And then I failed at that. But I did write down, the music becomes more romantic. The music is more like from a different decade as well.
Right.
And
it's the one that goes, like, shoo-up, my baby. Ooh.
Yes, I know. I can't believe we
like
both failed at that.
Long time, which is a love song. And the reason that
song, the way they look at each other in that that playing is like it's a love scene.
It's a love scene, yes. And because Kevin is like, somebody came in here and played a song that made me think of you. So Chiron basically drives down from Atlanta to Miami to say, what song was it? And then it turns out to be like this just sweet love song, and like your heart instantly melts, and it's just so beautiful and sweet, and you want them to like get married right then and there, or at least I did. But it's not a fanfic. It's as much as I felt like it at the moment. It was like, it's not a fanfic. It's not a fanfic. But yeah, it was a really sweet moment.
Yeah, it was. I'm just trying to figure out which song that was, because I'm so mad at myself because I'm the music person, and I wrote down, I was like, music changes.
I was like, oh, Erin will totally have it written down. She's the music person.
I don't know why I didn't write the name of the song down, but I was like, I'll just write music changes to this theme, and then when they have the romantic moment.
It's called Shubop, My Baby. Ooh, it's been a mighty long time. Close enough.
I think I found it, so I'm going to wait till it plays here, and then I can verify that it is Hello Stranger. I think it's Hello Stranger.
That's exactly
by
it.
Barbara Lewis.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, which fits, because Hello Stranger, they haven't seen each other.
Yes, exactly.
So it fits. Yay, we found that. I know. I'm so ashamed of myself. I failed big time because I wrote down a bunch of stuff about the music, because I also, once we're done talking about this, there's a couple other things. Like, I really want to mention the score, because I think the score this movie is so good, because it's not invasive. It's not intrusive. It's just,
that's what makes it there. Perfect.
It's just, that's what a score should be.
Yes.
And unlike hitting you over the head with needle drops, this movie doesn't do that, which is also another good thing, I think, for this one. But yeah, I grew to appreciate Trevante Rhodes' performance even more the second time watching it. I think he's amazing anyway, but it's so amazing that these actors didn't sit in a room, that all three actors, the young kid, the teenage version, and the adult version of Chiron, that they weren't actually sitting in and going, okay, how are you playing this character? Oh, well, I'm playing this character. Oh, let's all just feed off of each other, because you would never know it. I mean, yes, there are differences because of where they are in life, that they've changed, but there's always that sweetness and that vulnerability and that loneliness. Just every single chapter, when I wrote down notes, I always wrote lonely, 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 lonely. And so that's a pervasive theme, and you see it in the eyes. But even as the adult version of Chiron, even as Black, he still is holding his eyes in the same way. And that's why it just blows my mind. And I'm not sure if they got some kind of direction from Barry Jenkins, but he wanted them very much to not know how the others were playing the character.
Right. No, but that's what, I just keep going back to that moment when Kevin calls him, and this whole facade that he's been carrying around for who knows how long fades away completely, and all you're left with is a vulnerable young boy who is talking to somebody from his childhood, and that loneliness is back full force, and that vulnerability, that softness.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about it makes me just want to cry, because you're back to just wanting to hold him and tell him that things are going to be okay.
Yeah, which is something, at least for me, I want to do through this whole movie. It's like
Yeah.
he's one of those characters where you're just like, oh my gosh, if I could just somehow make your life better and give you the life you deserve, which is to have an amazing, incredible life where everything is, you know, easy for you and beautiful for you and all that stuff. And of course that doesn't happen.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, you very much, sorry, I'm getting emotional thinking about that. But it's very sad to me that I think Mahershala Ali, I think he's amazing. I think Naomi Harris is amazing because they were both nominated. And of course, Mahershala Ali won for his performance as Juan. And I think Naomi Harris is amazing as well, um, as Paula. But it just makes me sad that not a single one of the actors that played Chiron got nominated for the Academy Awards. I'm just looking to see if they got nominated anywhere else. They did an outstanding cast for Screen Actors Guild, of course.
Mhm.
But I'm just briefly looking at that because they're all so amazing and so beautiful. And and like I said, it's just so seamless to me. You never ever think this isn't the same character. And I think it would have been very easy to have the character of Black become just this completely and totally hardened, where you didn't see any ounce of Chiron, and that doesn't happen. Um, And yeah, thank you. Yeah, Bailey put in "Hello, Stranger" after I must have already looked it up before. You put it in there. Is it okay for the character? For since we're talking about that, how they all kind of blend together? Is it direction? Is it screenplay? Or is it who the character actually boils down to? I think it's all three.
Yeah.
It's all
I
three.
mean,
You have to have all three working together.
you,
So you
you
have to have the
talk
blueprint.
about a fortuitous thing, serendipity, and every now and then it's like you hear so many times the expression, "It's lightning in a bottle." It's you couldn't replicate it if you tried, and that's absolutely true. In what other universe can you come up with these actors, with this director, with this screenplay, with the play from which it was off of which it was based, and the music and everything, and it's perfect. And like even the moment in the swimming scene where what we talked about with the baptism and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
they initially thought they were going to have 6 hours to film this. They ended up having like 90 minutes because Miami weather, and it couldn't be more perfect. It couldn't be more perfect than the way that it was shot and delivered. It's, oh my gosh, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
miracle basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
And
there's definitely skill, but you still have like all of these lucky ingredients.
yeah, you still have to have that. Like, honestly, making a movie, getting a movie made, it's a miracle any movie ever gets made because it's very hard to make a movie.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time just to get 5 minutes of screen time. Can take a whole day depending on what's going on and different angles you have to shoot it at and different things like that. And when you're making an independent film, which I know this was also produced by Plan B, which is, of course, Brad Pitt's production company. But after things that I heard about Minari and whether or not they actually were like very supportive as far as like giving the stuff they needed at the time, I kind of have a different thought. Because I want to say, really, I know this is total tangent here, but it's the same production company. Because I know a lot of people talked about when, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting her name? When the supporting actress from Minari, when she won, And everybody talked about how she was gushing about Brad Pitt. And that's not what she was doing. She was saying, where were you? We were trying to get you on the set. And here you finally are. We were trying to get you on the set because we needed you for things. She's like, I wasn't gushing about him. I wasn't like.
But people hear what they want to hear.
Exactly.
Particularly when it's not a white person talking. Or, even white women have a hard time getting the point across about white men.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like, that's not at all what I was saying. And we'll watch Minari too. That's a beautiful film. Anyway, sorry, that was a total tangent there, but same production company, or one of the producers, not the whole production company. Sorry. But anyway, for this final chapter for Black, I think it is very interesting that he starts going by the nickname that Kevin gave him, because that's the other thing I want to say, and this speaks to who Chiron really is deep down. The fact that he actually goes there to this man who, when he was a teenager, broke him and hurt him in a way that changed him forever. And the fact that he goes there, and really it's such an act of genuine forgiveness. And what's beautiful about that is you see that he's not yet ready to forgive his mother, but he's at the point where he can forgive Kevin. And forgiveness is such a personal thing, and it's totally up to the person to forgive. And forgiveness is not about forgetting. And I think it's so great that you do see this act of forgiveness where he goes there and he sits down and he eats with him, and it's very romantic. And how when he goes up to the counter and Kevin doesn't even realize it's him at first, and he doesn't say anything, and you're just watching him going, and you know that in his head he's like, please let him know who I am. Please let him know who I am when he comes. And then when he finally does, it's like, it's this moment of relief. He's just like, oh.
but just because Kevin is distracted. He's doing his waiter/cook thing, which, by the way, terribly understaffed. What is the deal there?
I know, there's nobody else working there.
Like, he's cooking and serving and bussing. Like, I hope that they're paying him triple, because
I don't think there was a single person working there.
No. My gosh. But yeah, the second that he looks into his eyes, he knows exactly who it is. It doesn't take more than a second, and the look on Kevin's face.
Mm-hmm.
And then he plays it off, and he's being all like flirty and aloof and everything, but it was still super cute. It was still super not rom-com, because this is not a comedy for sure, but it's like a romance re-encounter moment. It's like what somebody would write, like a really angsty fic, and this would be like towards the end of that very angsty fic. 100%. This is what it felt like.
Yeah, very much. Very much. Just the looks. There's a little bit of nervousness from both of them. Kevin does it differently. He plays it off, but there's still that nervousness there. And what I do want to point out, though, earlier with the way Chiron is with his drug dealers, he is hard, but he's also soft with them. I want to point that out, because in the scene where he's accusing the drug dealer at first of skimming from him and taking more money, or that the count isn't right, he does then end up being a little bit softer towards the end of that exchange, where he does go, oh, I'm just playing with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, but just imagine the terror.
Oh no, he does. He isn't stealing that terror. And you can see in his eyes, but I did want to point that out, that at least he has a little, I think it's part of it. It's because he's trying to be this tough guy. Like I said, he's trying to, the fact that his body is amazing. And I think a lot of that is because he wanted to build his body up even more. And he wanted to be that strong person where nobody's going to force him down on the ground ever again. And now he's got that look. So yeah, he's going to instill that fear where they're going to respect him, but he'll also just be like, oh, no, but you're still going to respect me. You're never going to steal from me. So now you have this fear in you won't steal from me, but I'll also be not completely hard, because I'm not a hard and tough person. It's just the facade I have. So,
but here's the thing, because like my interpretation of it is that that's scarier.
That's true. That's
because
true,
it's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing where abusive parents keep you on your toes, because they don't want you to see the chancla coming. They don't want you to see that slap coming. it's like, is it going to hit me this time? Okay, he didn't this time. I have to be more careful the next time so that he doesn't. So like that was more my interpretation, because he is trying to
Yeah,
keep
that's a
people
good
at arm's length, and that's a really good way to do it. If they can't trust you
Mhm.
to, to treat them with not even respect, but with faith that you're operating in good faith, which I know I said faith twice, but George Michael episode is coming up and I gotta
Yeah.
have faith, the faith, the faith.
Okay, I'll count that as singing. 'Cause we have hardly had anything that goes with the.
Well, I did sing part of Hello
Oh, that's
Stranger,
true.
so there
That's
you
true.
go.
Yeah, you said okay. So we've had singing, we've had Queer as Folk, we've had fanfic, and of course we had tangents. But that's the freebie. I think that's
Yeah.
all we've had because I
Can
kind of
you
was
believe
like,
it?
well, I'm not surprised, honestly. I was like, this episode is probably, we almost got to one of the bingo squares because I mentioned a movie the person is in, but I didn't mention the actor's name. So we almost got to that. And I almost mentioned it just to fill in that. Maybe I'll do it again. Maybe I'll throw it in here.
Do you mean the main actor in Waves, Mr. Kelvin Harrison Jr.?
There you go, Kelvin. Yes. Yes. I actually was going to mention what I was going to mention about him is the other day, I had retweeted something through our podcast Twitter account where it was Kelvin Harrison Jr. was reading something from the movie Monster that's on Netflix that came out in 2018, but it didn't get a distributor until this year. And I have talked about that movie on a different episode and how it's got flaws, but his performance, of course, is phenomenal. And so I retweeted this with quote tweeted it and said, Kelvin Harrison Jr. is one of the best actors we have around today, which everybody knows I think that, but it's just honestly true. And if you don't think that, then you just don't know good acting.
Then you're dead to Erin. If you don't agree, you're dead to Erin. Don't even talk to her again.
And then I'm going to make sure I get the podcast right. And then I had a podcast finally, like, I was like, somebody else loves Kelvin Harrison Jr. like I do. I'm like, finally. Like, I'm not just yelling it into the void and being like, come on, people, you have no idea. This is like the best. So
well, up next, you just have to get those Barry Watson stands behind you.
There's Barry Watson now. Now you can mark that
to
off.
fill out
too.
your fandom.
You can mark Barry Watson on your bingo card too. So I don't know if Carlin knew that was on the bingo card, but it doesn't really matter because now that's been marked. But anyway, it was so nice to finally have somebody else be raving. Oh, here I can. And that was a Game for a Movie podcast that replied, and so we talked about that. And I said, "Well, have you seen Waves or Loose?" He's like, no, I haven't, but oh my gosh, so good at It Comes at Night, which is another movie I always mention.
Oh, yes. It Comes at Night sounds like something that might be on Shudder.
There's another one. We're just throwing them in there. You can get bingo with one of two squares. Well, Shudder, did Shudder get it for you, Bailey? Because Shudder won it for you last time.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So big tangent there.
Bingo.
Oh, good. And
yes, Bailey.
And Bailey, that'll be your second podcast sticker. Maybe I should try to get you something else because you won the podcast sticker for it did. Shudder is the one that's going to win bingo for everybody. That would be so funny if that was what it did for everybody from now on. But I mailed today, and apologies for the delay trying to get stuff from Redbubble, but I mailed today the sticker and the pin that you won in our first trivia. So now you're going to get another one mailed to you, which if she hasn't already, I'm going to ask Erin to maybe just hold off and just mail this one and the magazine you won last week. Anyway, if it's okay with you, you're going to get 2 stickers. So
you're going to just wallpaper your house eventually, Bailey.
There you go.
People will walk in and be like, interesting decor. And you'll just be like, okay, have you heard of this podcast?
That'll become like, have you ever seen the movie? This is a major. Have you ever seen the movie The Fan with Robert De
No.
Niro where he's obsessed with Wesley
Oh
Snipes.
yes.
Well, I think he has like a wall of stuff of Wesley Snipes' character, and then it'll just become, then it'll become a little frightening.
She'll be right up there with Christian Bale and people that you were excited about, and then suddenly like
There's another square, even though you already got. Anyway, wow. I was like, whoa, we are doing so well.
and then it all went off the rails.
Yeah. Oh, Juliet naked coming up again. That's such a great movie. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, I really ditto everything you said. Even though chapter 1 is my favorite chapter, I really love and appreciate this chapter so much because there are some romantic elements to it. I do want to point out, and this was something that Bailey said when she was tweeting about this. Okay, so Chiron says he does not drink. And Kevin pours him some wine and kind of pushes the wine on him. I don't know if they realize the fact that really, if someone says they don't drink, don't push alcohol on them. That's not okay.
Yeah, frankly, like I was not cool with that either.
Yeah. And I know Bailey pointed that out last night during the tweet of it. That was not okay because you have no idea why that person doesn't drink. And that's the one thing about alcohol I want to say is I think alcohol is like the most acceptable drug next to caffeine. And so when you don't drink or if you aren't getting drunk, people like to just push it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Carlos, well, I was drinking a Cayman Jack margarita while we were recording. And Carlos got 2 White Claws. Because of Meg.
I just miss her so much.
We don't have any Meg watching. But yeah, that was just not okay. You don't do that. So that was the one thing where I was like, Kevin.
Yeah. And I think that it was just used as an expository tool because Chiron says that the reason that he doesn't bother with alcohol is because he can't really taste it. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if like that, that beating kind of messed with his sense of taste or smell or something like that, like maybe bringing back a consequence. Mm-hmm. Because that's the only thing that I could think of that would make sense as to why they even did that.
Yeah.
Because it's like one of those, like if you have a gun, you have to use it. Like if you have a person who's not drinking wine and you specifically mention that, then you have to use it, kind of similar. But I don't know. I'm going to shut up now. Bye.
No, I think that could very well be the case. I thought maybe he was saying that like he can't taste it. Like I was going like maybe he's worried about becoming an addict like his mom. That's where I was taking it from. But
yeah, I mean, that's also a possibility. I just take things and really extrapolate things that came out of nowhere, really.
I think that's
how we end up on a lot of tangents.
Yeah. But I think it's a good one. That's a good one. So
yes.
Yeah. My goal though is going to be, and I don't know how it'll happen, every bingo is going to be won by Shudder. So it's going to win every bingo.
Now, if only they would sponsor you.
I know, man. I haven't mentioned them much lately, so they're probably like done with me, but
that one Shudder rep is like just waiting for the 300th mention. Just get there.
And then yeah. I don't know how Shudder will come up George Michael, but I didn't know it would come up this night. So,
Hey, Shudder finds a way.
Yep. Singing, I think, will have no problem with the George Michael.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
That one will no problem. Probably even, although I got rid of accent and now it's just you do an impression. So it's
right.
And singing. Those are 2 separate ones.
I'm the new Shudder.
I say or singing. Sorry, everybody. I can't remember if I said Carla does an impression and didn't I put Carla sings? I thought I did Carla sings.
I thought so.
Why is it not? Oh, yes, it is because it's really big
Okay.
type. Just because, not because I made it big type, because it's only 2 words. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's go to that final scene between Chiron and Kevin. And I can already tell. Yeah, it's yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, so it ends up at this really hopeful place. And they're holding each other. Like, how much more fanfic can you get? Although in the fanfic world, you would get ripped a new one, and then you would,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
people would be demanding new chapters. Like, are you gonna post anymore? How about any codas? You know, like, are you gonna make any timestamps? No, there are no timestamps. This is a movie, not a fic. I am saying this to myself because I really want timestamps or a coda or something.
I bet it's out there. I bet it's out there.
Oh, don't make me go looking. I'll fall into a rabbit hole. But yeah, it ends up okay. So there's, you know, they don't end up like making out or anything. They don't make up like naked in bed together or anything. It's just Kevin holding Chiron as Chiron just lets himself be. And that is exactly what you want for him. The entire film. You want somebody to hold him. You want somebody to accept him exactly for who he is. And that's where the movie ends. And if that's not a fabulous ending, I don't know what is, because he finally gets the love that he deserves. And yeah, it may not be a moment where like they're swearing eternal love to each other or where they're, you know, walking down the aisle together. That doesn't matter. Chiron has finally had that soft physical intimacy, that acceptance, that full-hearted acknowledgement of who he is on the inside, deep down on the inside. And that's all I wanted for him the entire movie. I think whether you're looking at young Chiron in the little part, if you're looking at teen Chiron, and we've talked about how we just wanted to, you know, jump into the screen and hold him and tell him everything's going to be okay. Things were not going to be okay. And Kevin gets that. Kevin gets that their lives are difficult. Their lives are different. And he's there for him. He may not have been there for him before. He couldn't put himself in the place to be there. But now there he is, and Chiron has a place where he can just openly just be. And wherever things may take them beyond that moment, you know, in a way, I don't need to see anymore. Like, you know, I'm an excited fangirl, and I love happy endings, and I love, you know, full on romantic, beautiful things. But if this is the last scene and all we get is Chiron being held and loved for who he is, I will take it. I'll take it and I will run, because that's all I wanted for him all along anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like Bailey said, it is a moment that it emphasizes that sex is not the thing that makes us human. Connection makes us human. And then Bailey also says the lack of sexual action is important. It's not a sexual need, it's an emotional need.
Yeah, you know, Chiron has gone through so much his entire life. Kevin has gone through so much, and it's just beautiful seeing two grown Black men being able to just be soft with each other. Because that's one thing that I think maybe some people may not be really cognizant of as they're watching this movie, is that, you know, coming out is hard, but a lot of the time if you're Black, it can be harder. And there's so much less acceptance of Black male love or even softness, that it makes, and you know, independent of a community, but I'm just talking also about in the world at large, because, you know, going back to Juan and his portrayal, where he himself is a soft dude who, yes, he's dealing drugs, but he's also asking one of his dealers how his mom is, and he's taking in this boy and trying to mentor him simply because he sees that there's a need for that. Um, and even if, with or without sexual tension, with or without romantic feelings, it's still a very necessary scene.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, to every single, yeah, yeah. It's and the fact that right before it even happens, Chiron says no one else has ever touched him. He's the only man that's ever touched him, which is just so sad and so heartbreaking. But there's also this moment of being completely and totally vulnerable and open and letting that big wall that he's built up down and just being like, I'm going to be completely open and vulnerable with you because I trust you, even though you hurt me in a big way. That's what's so amazing is this is a person that really hurt him and broke his heart. And yet he's still like, no, I still want to be with you. I still want some affection from you. And it doesn't have to be sexual. It doesn't have, but some kind of intimacy. And I think that their moment in a way is even more intimate than sex because it is this moment that he hasn't had since that moment on the beach. He hasn't had any kind of touch or affection like that. And so here he is getting it finally from the man that he loves and trusts, and just having that moment of being able to rest his head on his shoulder and being held and not being treated like crap for being vulnerable is just beautiful all
Yeah.
around.
And exactly, like it is just a moment of trust. It's a moment of extreme vulnerability where, he has really built a wall around himself down
Mhm.
to his body. His body is a
Yeah.
wall from the world. And here he is making himself vulnerable in the most just complete way. Because sex is sex. And you can have sex with anybody, but you can't have that trust with just anybody.
Mhm.
And he really just gives himself to Kevin in that moment. And just thinking about that scene, like I'm just playing it in my head and how wonderful and affectionate and accepting, like that is the big word for me, that acceptance that Chiron has needed his entire life. And yeah, he had acceptance from Juan and from Teresa, but he also had that big block with them, and
Mhm.
that their lifestyle is part of what's fueling his misery. And yes, Kevin helped fuel his misery further, but he understands at least why Kevin did that. He himself could have turned him in, and he didn't do that because he gets it. He gets it, and Kevin gets him. And that at the end
Mhm.
of the day is what really, really matters in that connection.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And even the last shot of when you see Chiron as a boy on the beach and he looks back and basically breaks that wall and looks at us, the audience. That's a beautiful the way that's shot. I just want to briefly say the cinematography in this movie. Oh, it is
So
so
good.
breathtakingly beautiful. It's so certain
Wow.
shots and like the shot when Kevin and Chiron are on the beach and you just see Chiron's hand in the sand, gripping the sand. Oh, just even that little, it's just the cinematography
Well,
is so
and this
beautiful.
is, back around the time when we start having shows like Insecure and movies like Moonlight, where they're actually shooting Black people with lighting that works for Black people. Because in most movies, the lighting is there to flatter white complexions, to,
Mhm.
and then anybody else doesn't really matter. They're just kind of there anyway. But this movie that has almost exclusively Black actors, and Insecure similarly, the lighting is everything. because a lot of the times when you're watching a movie, like the lighting helps to set the mood, to get you into the spirit
Mm-hmm.
of where the characters are emotionally. Same with music and with, but lighting makes such a big difference. And the fact that this was specifically geared to highlight the features of Black people and to bring out this, all of this emotional, um, to highlight the emotional depth of what was going on. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's so beautiful that, and it's also very sad that it's, how many years into movie making in general, and it's not until like the 2010s that we really start seeing progress in the way that Black people are portrayed, not only as a character but also through the lighting.
Mm-hmm. Which is why, again, it's important to have not just white people involved. Although this is James Laxton, and I believe actually James Laxton is a white man, but still, it's important that you have people behind the scenes and people that are in charge that are not just white people. And people do learn how everybody deserves to be lit in a way that works and that is flattering. And he also does the cinematography in Barry Jenkins' other amazing film, If Beale Street Could Talk, which is another beautiful, beautiful, heartbreaking movie as well. But I highly recommend that too. Um, yeah, and he is, yeah, Bailey just confirmed he is white. Yeah. But it still is important to have behind on every level, like I've said, you have to have people, not just white people controlling everything, and not just cis white men, and not just straight white women, and not just, you have to have everybody doing that and having a say and being able to see themselves on screen. And yeah, the cinematography is so gorgeous. And I want to talk about now, I just want to talk about the direction, and then we'll get into the Oscar win because it is important to talk about the Oscar win. Um, so Barry Jenkins, what are your thoughts on Barry Jenkins? I'm just gonna say that. What are your thoughts on Barry Jenkins? Because he's just love him. So
Well, okay, so you know me, I'm not as
I
knowledgeable
know.
about direction, but I did do some research because I wanted to be thorough. And so I landed on talking about both Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney, because you can't have the movie at all without Terrell Alvin McCraney's
Mhm.
script in the first place. And yeah, it's great that he was able to pair up with Barry Jenkins, who had a lot of similar experiences growing up, so they were able to work from a similar point of view. Um, but without Terrell, nothing else would have worked out, because it wouldn't
Mhm.
you wouldn't even have even had a script. And I keep going back to Juan only because, well, first of all, it's a great character, but also because the movie starts out with Juan, not Chiron. We get to Chiron very quickly thereafter, but it starts out with Juan and the drug deal. And so in um, so Terrell um, McCraney, he had a mentor similar to Juan growing up, and he was a boyfriend of his mother's, and they called him Blue, um, which I think ties into the whole Moonlight, um, and and Black boys and blue. It's
Yeah.
it's the Moonlight can make Black boys aspire to be somebody as lovely as Blue, somebody who will take care of you, who will protect you, who will care about you and embrace you. Um, so when Barry Jenkins comes into the picture, he honors all of that, which I think is so important, because reading about this and this process, it really strikes me that Barry Jenkins could have come in and said, okay, well, that's cute, but here are the things that I'm going to get rid of. Sorry. And he doesn't. He carries them into his heart and throughout the film. And I had also read that Barry Jenkins pretty much he himself wrote the third act, the part with Black. And the fact that it carries so seamlessly through, connecting through from the beginning to the end, speaks to that relationship that can only be forged if you have grown up under similar circumstances. I mean, Barry Jenkins went to the same school just a year earlier
Mm-hmm.
than Terrell McCraney, which is, wow. We talk about the whole thing with serendipity, and there it is again. So they have all these shared life experiences, and how Barry Jenkins communicates that through the adaptation of the screenplay and through the directing. Um, he really carries in him the idea that this movie is about, being Black, being gay, being poor, growing up in the projects, growing up among drug dealers. But more importantly, it's about Chiron. It's about this one person. So it is both expansive and very intimate, which is a hell of a feat. And I don't think that you can have the best screenplay, you can have the best material from which to base it, but if you don't have somebody to make that vision come alive, then it's all worthless. And so I think that this movie worked out exactly the way that it was supposed to. If you're believing in the divine, then there was like some um carrying grace that allowed all of these ingredients to come together to make this beautiful, just perfect movie. It's really just, oh, it just moves my heart in ways that I didn't know my heart could be moved. And that doesn't really speak to, uh, the process of directing, but that's not my problem. I'm just here to say that I loved it.
Well, that just speaks to the fact that he did his job as a director. If
Yeah,
he
yeah, what
made
she
you love
said.
the movie, if he made you love the movie and made you feel the movie, that is part of his job, is to make you connect to this movie, make you, um, feel what you're supposed to be feeling. And the fact that he did, once again, I'm going to plug that Terry Gross interview because I think that interview with both of them is so great and wonderful. And the fact that she interviewed both Barry Jenkins and Terrell Alvin McCraney was so important because you wouldn't have this movie, of course, without Terrell Alvin McCraney. And even though Barry Jenkins did help write the screenplay and all of that, it still came from the play. And which the play is actually In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. That's actually the full name of the play. So just to put that out there too, which was unproduced. I don't know if it's ever. I don't think it ever has been since then. I don't know. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking up to see, but I didn't see anywhere where it has. So yeah. But anyway, he's a very skilled director in the fact that he he lovingly has cared for this script and this story. So basically a lot of the way that screenwriters like to put it, or writers like to put it, is they've given birth to this child and they give it to somebody else to raise if they're not directing it themselves. So even though Barry Jenkins also is a writer on this, I just want to say that too, but Terrell Alvin McCraney gave this his baby, which was so personal for him too, since it was so much about his life as well. There's so many things from this that he drew on, and gave it to Barry Jenkins, and Barry Jenkins raised his baby beautifully and respected everything that he was trying to get across in this movie. And I think it's also because they were connected so well, and they had so many similar things growing up, and like you said, they had that 1 year in between. I mean, that's pretty incredible. That's like kismet and fate, whatever your beliefs are. I mean, it really is incredible that happened that way. But yeah, Barry Jenkins not only did that, but he also, I think, is so great with his actors. He always has amazingly talented actors around him anyway, but he allows them the opportunity to be as vulnerable as possible, I think, and gives him that freedom. And even though he didn't want the actors playing Chiron, he didn't want them to meet, I think in a way that was kind of a blessing for them, kind of like, okay, I trust you enough that you are going to be able to take this character and know how to play this character because the screenplay is strong enough, because you're a strong enough actor that you won't need to rely on meeting with the other actors playing you, because I know you'll be able to do it yourself. I don't know. Everything I've heard about him is that he's a great director, and there are no, like, stories of like how impossible it is to work with him as an actor. And you can tell that. You can tell how much he loves the craft. You can tell how much he loves story and he loves character. For me, and this is why I love a lot of independent films, is they're so character driven, and this movie is very much a character study. This movie is, like you said, Carla, this is Chiron's story. This is about him. It's all about his character. And when you have movies like that, I think sometimes people tend to think that the directing isn't as masterful because of the fact that you don't have big explosions and you don't have big things that may seem like, directors showcase, because you're showcasing the performances and you're showcasing the characters. But I think that takes a totally different skill, because you have to be able to kind of, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but kind of leave an ego behind of being like, I'm going to focus on what's important, and what's important is this character, and telling his story and telling his struggles and making it relatable to the audience, to anyone who sees this movie, and to make them feel and make them connect. And that's why I say, you saying that, Carla, totally what that says is he did his job. He completely did his job. I don't think there's a wrong moment in this movie, honestly. I can't think of one. I also think I really always want to say, watch If Beale Street Could Talk too. I think that's still on Hulu, hopefully, but definitely watch that one, because that's also beautiful. That's also it's also very hard to watch. It's also tragedy as well, but there's a lot of beauty in that movie. And you'll also see how Scully's. I have not watched The Underground Railroad yet. I know that Tiff, who was on here, have you watched it yet, Carla? No.
No, I haven't been able to get into that space where I can say to myself, okay, I can sit down and watch this and not like curl up into a ball for 15 weeks.
Yeah. I think, well, and Tiff said she was probably, I don't know if she's watched the second episode yet, but she said she did not recommend binging it. She had only watched one episode when she talked about it on episode a couple weeks ago when she recommended it. So I don't know if she's watched a second one yet or not. Yeah. And Bailey says, from a brief Google search, it does not seem to have been performed on stage yet. He has had other plays performed on stage and produced and everything. And that's Terrell that I'm talking about. Sorry. But yeah, he's just one of the most talented directors out there. And he directs my kind of stuff. Like, we are eventually going to talk about indie films on here, because I just have hesitated, because I don't know how many of my panelists would be joining there. It would just be me mainly. Then I can just spend the whole thing going, okay, let's talk about Loose. Let's talk about Waves. Let's talk about
just talk about all of your favorite movies breathlessly.
I'll just be talking about really, really obscure ones that probably no one has seen, like this movie called Passenger Side with Adam Scott.
I have never heard of it, but I will cheer for it.
I watched it at a film festival, and I don't think it was ever even released in a theater. Maybe it was. I don't know. I own the DVD, but or The Vicious Kind, also with Adam Scott, because everyone associates Adam Scott with comedy. I don't. I associate him with indie drama. So that's
okay. So what you're saying is that you're going to have to save us a bingo square for Adam Scott coming up soon.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Well, I mean, Christian Bale's all of a sudden too. So,
That's true. And Christian Bale has a lot of indie films, and yeah. And when I was in and even though I don't like Jeremy Renner anymore, there are some great indie films that he was in that I know. and no one has seen. They made maybe like $10 total.
Oh my gosh, you crack me up because you're like, okay, these are my favorite actors, and also these other 14.
I know. I always do that. These actors, oh, well, but I also love this actor and this actor, and how about this actor?
And then you're like, okay, you know what? I should do an episode about this actor. And then next thing you know, you're mentioning him every episode, and then you're making bingo squares about that actor.
Yep. Sorry. Just wait till I do my Kelvin Harrison Jr. episode. That one is going to be. Well, we're going to do a special episode coming up in November. It still seems very weird to me that I did this, but it's just an episode just to celebrate me on my birthday.
Hey, you know what? You absolutely deserve it.
Well, thanks.
And that's one character that we can all agree on.
Aw, thank you.
Universally beloved. There you go.
Aww. Yes, all panelists laughing. Yes, we do. Yeah, but when we do that one, I'll probably be like, okay, so so now I'm going to talk about every independent movie that I love. I'm going to make us all watch Waves and Loose, and we're going to watch Silver Linings Playbook.
Okay, are you also going to pay for our therapy, though?
I know, especially after Waves. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, Waves is on Showtime. So is Moonlight. So do a double feature and then you're going to be really wrecked.
I'll be dehydrated from all the crying.
Yeah, I recommend watching Waves first and then Moonlight because it may be hard to believe, but Moonlight is a lot lighter than Waves.
Whoa. Okay, so I have been duly warned.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, here's my list for watching those movies. Okay, be able to take off the next day from work. Invest in Kleenex stock. Buy a few gallons of water.
Yeah.
For the dehydration.
Here, I'll give you an order that you can watch some of my most recent favorite movies. And then, okay. So you want to start really the heaviest. So you have to start with Waves because Waves is the heaviest. And then you can go to Moonlight. And then we'll go a little bit lighter for a second. And you can all of a sudden go into Rocket Man, which will be quite
That's way later.
Yeah. And then you just keep the music going. You go to A Star Is Born.
And then such a light film. It's all fluff.
Yeah, especially the end,
Yes, total fluff.
What happens to Jackson is completely fluffy and light.
What, he goes to the circus? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, he goes to the circus.
He decides to become a clown, and so he goes to circus, and then eventually he goes to Disney World, right? I mean, that's the version that I saw.
Yes, that's what I saw too.
Okay,
yes,
cool.
Yes. And Allie and Jackson live happily ever after.
So happily ever after. So happily.
Nothing bad happens.
No.
And they have the cutest dog. Who, if you didn't know, that dog is actually Bradley Cooper's real life dog.
Oh, so see, with all of that, nothing bad can happen in the end.
Exactly. What on earth? And then you go from that. So then you're going from A Star Is Born, and then you can watch Loose. So you can see. So I'm kind of breaking up the Kelvin Harrison Jr. Award-worthy performances because Waves and Loose are two of the best performances of the past decade. I don't care what anyone says; they are. And if you disagree, you're wrong.
No two panelists agree or never come back.
Yeah. And Loose is another one that's adapted from a play.
Okay.
So, you got that. And then you'll go from Loose. Then you can keep the Kelvin Harrison Jr. love going for a little bit here and go watch It Comes at Night, which more people need to watch that movie because it's a great horror movie. No, I don't think it is on Shudder.
Shh. Just let people get Shutter first.
Oh, no, it is on Shutter. I'm sorry.
Tell them that you sent them.
I sent these people to Shutter. And then you can go and watch one of the best horror movies of the last decade, Sinister. So go watch Sinister. I don't know if you should end your night with that one, but although you've been up for over 24 hours by now, it might be light again.
You've been up for over 24 hours, and you definitely have a reliable psychiatrist on file.
Yeah.
You know, speed dial, ready to go.
Because Sinister scares the crap out of me. So
Oh my god!
I mentioned
Okay, well,
horror
if it scares
movies. I
you,
mentioned some horror movies. Even though you got bingo, you could get double bingo. I don't know. It does. It terrifies me. I watched it. Like, it was on Netflix last Halloween, and I was like, oh, I should watch this right before I go to bed. And that's exactly what I did. I'm like, this is not a smart idea.
that's a daylight, all the lights on movie.
Yeah, so I should probably think of something light to end it with. To end the night with, not
Can
Sinister.
you though? I mean, we are talking about you.
Yes, I like some light things.
Well, I mean, you could end your night with that small indie production that I've heard of called Eurovision.
I knew. I was like, is she going to mention Eurovision? I'm like, where's Eurovision? Hey, Bailey, you could probably win double bingo. I'm telling you.
Bailey, are you ready to wallpaper your home?
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to hook you up.
No, I will mention on Shudder. You know, we love Josh Rubin on this podcast. So you can watch Scare Me. So that'll be lighter.
Scare Me is fantastic. Yes.
Yes. And that's got some humor, some funniness.
Your night with Scare Me.
There you go. See, and say what a perfect, it wouldn't be a full night. I think you'd have to do this over like a whole day. But that's how you end the night. Yes, yes. So I'm very excited for Werewolves Within, giving a shout out.
I can't wait for that one.
Yes, yes. I'm going to watch the, I got a ticket for the virtual, because it's going to be at the Tribeca Film Festival. And I don't, and so you can also watch it virtual. I don't know if there's still tickets for that, but so I'll be watching it virtually towards the end. Did you get double bingo, Bailey? Or are you just laughing at me saying double bingo?
I mean, honestly, Bailey, at this point, if your card is not full.
I know. During that whole tangent, it had to have gotten full.
Although, listen, nobody has any.
Yes.
Nobody has any cause to complain about our tangents. You're just seeing them live. But.
And if you just started watching, because I think someone just joined us when we were going on the big long tangent, we spent most of this time actually talking about Moonlight. So.
Yes. I swear we were talking about Moonlight. We're going to keep talking about Moonlight, but
yes,
we just really needed to get some things off our chest.
Yes, I needed to design your perfect 24 or 48 hour movie binge with most of the stuff was super depressing, but we ended it with Eurovision and Scare Me. So you're ending it lighter. Right.
So you may only need
like,
you know, a few months of sessions with your therapist as opposed to, yes, exactly. As opposed to a few years.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I do want to go back to Moonlight after I led us on
let's do that
tangent. Okay, so I want to talk about the Oscar win because even though it was sadly, you know, overshadowed by the whole mix-up of calling the wrong name, and even though since that win, I would argue it hasn't, that didn't really, I think people thought, well, Moonlight won, that's going to change everything with the Oscars. Nah, didn't happen, sadly. But this is the first LGBT plus film and the first film featuring an all-black cast to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. So it is very significant that this film won. So I don't want to say that isn't significant just because it is pretty incredible. I remember that night, right? Because I remember when they announced, you know, La La Land, and then it ended up being, because I remember I was like, oh, okay. And I was actually going to even turn off the TV. And then it was like, whoa, no, it was actually Moonlight, which it's sad that took away from what should have been an incredible moment. but it still is incredible. So did you watch the Academy Awards that night?
Um, I watched part of it, and I do remember that moment. I don't know if it's because like there was like a quick replay that night, but I do remember watching that night that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just completely dismayed. Like, oh my God. I mean, first of all, what an embarrassment to
Yeah.
not read the card correctly. But also that, that, oh, I mean, it just kind of mirrors a lot of real world experiences where Black people excel and they're still overshadowed undeservedly. And this is what happened here. Moonlight won. It's a
Mm-hmm.
spectacular movie. It deserved every award and then some. It wins, and all people can talk about when they're talking about the Oscar win is remember when Warren Beatty read La La Land instead of Moonlight. I mean, to
Mm-hmm.
have that like kind of like an asterisk on your big win, it's so deflating. It's like when if there are probably like a million examples of, oh, remember when this Black person did something amazing? Yes, but do you remember the white person who did something else that really is the main focal point of that achievement? It's like, well, no, that's not how that works. But yeah, it totally is. So yeah, I, in short, yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, it is so sad. It's just like, okay, you know, and I know that Barry Jenkins recently said that it really kind of soured the whole experience for him too, which is
Yeah.
even sadder because
Well, yeah, I mean, like that's just really awful. It's a
Mhm.
really awful thing when it should have been their night, and that's all that should have mattered. We should have been reveling in their win, and all anybody can talk about was no, La La Land won, and so many people who were saying no, Moonlight didn't actually win. It was actually La La Land, because there are always people who will deny Black people a victory when they can throw in like a flag on the play or some perceived technicality, just anything to steal that thunder. It reminds me of Tarana Burke and the Me Too movement, and
Yeah.
Elsa Milano
Mhm.
taking a lot of the credit for it until she was called out so much that she couldn't avoid being like, "Oh, my bad." And even then, it was still, the Tarana Burke Me Too movement featuring Elsa Milano.
Mhm.
And this just feels similar. Like this was Barry Jenkins and his efforts, and Terrell Alvin um, McCreary's
Agree.
win,
Excuse me. Sorry.
and to have all of that just kind of under the shadow of being forever tied to this very very white movie. It's got to be excruciating, because honestly, like if it had been like a mistake like this with a movie that wasn't so lily white, maybe it wouldn't have stung as much. Maybe it's still a big maybe, but wow,
Mhm.
it's just really awful.
Yeah, and it plays into that whole um that whole video that I've talked about before that I wish I could remember where it's talking about, the whole it even plays the whole white savior trope without actually being like because in that movie the I don't know if it's even called White Savior the movie. I can't remember what that little parody thing is called. But in that movie, every single moment, this white man is trying to usurp what this black woman is doing throughout the whole little faux trailer, even like, look, I adjusted your microphone. I'm a hero. And it's the same kind of thing, it's really sad because it is history making. It is amazing. It's like with the LGBTQIA angle with it, it did what unfortunately Brokeback Mountain wasn't able to do. So it also did that because, as everybody knows, Crash won the year that Brokeback Mountain was supposed to win, or should have won, I should say.
No, it should. It absolutely
Not
should
even
have won.
supposed to. Should have.
Yeah, I mean, you're not lying though. There,
Yeah. Yeah.
Crash
And
had no
like,
business being even nominated. To be perfectly honest,
yeah. And then, of course, when Green Book happened, that almost was worse than Crash.
we shall not speak of it.
Sorry. And Bailey said there's a Vox video which talks about it and focuses on the typography without even mentioning how ceiling breaking the award was. I haven't watched this video. If you find it, put it in the comments and maybe I'll search for it later. But yeah, thanks for pointing out. But yeah, it was an incredible thing. It was very, I mean, my jaw was like, because the fact that this movie was even nominated for any awards was pretty remarkable. Honestly, that was pretty amazing.
Right. So it's just, it couldn't have happened at a worse time to a movie. Oh my gosh. I mean, all of the significance got buried under this. You know, this is a movie that deals so brilliantly with stereotype, with microaggressions, with homophobia, and with incarceration and love and queerness. All of that movie meant, and the expectations and the barriers that I don't even, there's just too many words to put into how frustrating it is that all that we can really think about now when we talk about the Oscar win is freaking La La Land.
Yeah. And I'm one of the few people that actually I actually liked that movie. I see the issues and the problems with it galore. But in the long run, the movie that has more impact, that's better done, that's better written, better directed, better acted, all that jazz is, and I didn't mean to say jazz because La
La Land was about jazz. What are you hidden? You know, what's the hidden message here, Erin? Are you secretly trying to throw a nod to La La Land? Are you a La La Land truther?
A La La Land truther? Are there There probably are.
There's like an underground channel somewhere, just Justice for La La Land. Yeah. Where they're trying to just steal back
for La La Land.
The Oscar that is rightfully theirs.
There probably is. There probably honestly is that. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But anyway. I'm just picturing that. Oh man, I'm picturing like a documentary being done about these people.
Because you I don't want that. Give them a platform, we know that this was really, bad for Black community, particularly the Black LGBTQIA plus community. But how did it affect the white people?
Yeah.
Can we?
Yeah.
We just want to understand them. Just about giving them a platform. We just want to talk to them.
Yep. Yeah. And I really think, when Green Book won a couple of years later, I honestly think that winning was almost in response to this winning. Because I will say the next year you did have Get Out winning for Best Original Screenplay. I believe it was the very next year. You had that winning, which was pretty incredible too. That was pretty amazing. But then you keep having stuff happening where it's Green Book, and then you have like Bohemian Rhapsody, which, oh my God, the fact that you have someone win for that. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love, and Rami I'm not. Malek? Thank you. I was trying to say Mally. I'm sorry. I don't know what that even means. Sorry. And hey, he's a good actor. Yes. But the fact that you have him win for a performance that, I'm sorry, comparatively, you don't even have, and I'm sorry, this is going to that white person thing, but then you don't have Taron Egerton win for doing something a million times better.
No, there's no disputing it there. Listen,
The next year, not the same year.
I really enjoyed Rami Malek's performance. I thought it was great. And nothing on Taron Egerton as Elton John and Rocket Man.
Yeah, or Calvin Harrison Jr. in Loose or in Waves. Sorry.
Bailey already double won. Okay. She can't win more based on Calvin Harrison Jr.
Or George Clooney. And no, just kidding. Just kidding. I'm just throwing that in there to get the George Clooney square. I think we've probably filled all of them now, but because we did mention Christian Bale already.
I sang, so there you go.
You sang you did an impression. Oh,
no, I didn't do an impression.
Oh, you didn't do an impression. No, you didn't. You're right. Oh my gosh. I'm sure I said awesome. I'm sure that's been said. We've all been laughing. We said Eurovision. Barry Watson was mentioned. Shudder was mentioned. A horror movie was mentioned. Oh no, there's one we have not mentioned.
One we have not mentioned?
Yeah, it has not come up. I know. What can make Moonlight better?
The Oscars?
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned the Oscars.
I don't know what could make Moonlight better. Yeah, we didn't mention one that I'm not going to say because I don't want to say it. It has to come naturally.
It has to just flow.
We said that Carla did an impression.
We said Barry Watson.
Yeah, I know. That's not that. Yeah. It has to do, I'll give a hint. It has to do with last week. Bailey, do you know? I mean, well, she sees the bingo card, so of course she's gonna know. And Carla could easily look at the bingo card and know too.
Like,
I'm trying to make it come naturally. She said, "Yeah."
Was it Erla?
No. I should have put that on there, though. I should have put Erla on there.
Now I have to go look. Like, let me go back to like 15 hours here. Oh no, I can't do it from here. Never mind. Wait, I can. I'm just gonna copy and paste this sucker. I'm determined. Okay, listen. I'm in here for the long haul. Like it or not, this is who I am. This is what you signed up for, Missy.
Oh, we didn't mention. That's right. I think I took that out. Did I take that out? We didn't mention Supernatural. That's true. We didn't. Oops. Well, we mentioned it now, but it doesn't really quite count. Yeah, but we didn't mention Supernatural. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, though.
Yes. Now I understand. Yes. Absolutely. A zombie tiger would have made.
That's why she was.
Would have sent this over the top. I can't believe that I couldn't keep the hint.
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch it either.
I can't believe it. I'm so ashamed of myself. I have failed you, Bailey. I have failed you.
That was such a good try, though, because we had said last week that every movie needs a zombie tiger.
Right. How quickly we forget.
I know. Where would the zombie tiger fit in here?
Just like in the background. Stalking as Awful Terrell is telling Kevin, like in the lunchroom, Terrell says to Kevin, "Would you punch anybody that I told you to?" And the zombie tiger's like, "Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it, Kevin. No.
Don't do it, Kevin."
It's what do you mean? No, Kevin, don't do it.
Yeah, or the zombie tiger is always protecting Chiron in some way, respects,
yes.
or like the zombie tiger is his pet.
What do you feed a zombie tiger? I mean, I can't really see that.
Humans.
Well, maybe that's why he's stalking the lunchroom.
Yeah,
he wants food. He's hungry too. Feed your zombie tiger pet.
Or he's by the ocean. Maybe do zombie tigers eat sharks? Although I
don't see why not.
So
I mean, zombie tigers aren't even real, so I don't see why they couldn't eat sharks. Like, there's nothing making this logistically impossible.
They're not real.
They're only as real as we want them to be. And in our real world of tiger zombies, they can eat sharks.
So there. Oh yeah, or any fish.
Yes.
They found an ocean. They just go in the ocean and they. Yeah.
Yes.
Into the water thing.
It's a huge
I
zombie
sent you my full bingo card, Bailey. So that's how many stickers? How many stickers is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a lot of stickers, Bailey.
Okay, you might want to like, just make sure that you patch any holes in that wall where you're gonna put all these stickers, and just put a fresh coat of paint on it. Maybe turquoise to really make those stickers pop.
We are gonna have. I do want to put out there. I'm trying to contact the person, Brooke, who did our amazing logo. I'm trying to also just get her to do a horror one. We're going to release a horror one September 1st to coincide with the start of our epic horror trivia. I don't know. I don't think Bailey's a horror person, so I don't know if she's going to be playing along. You could do research. You don't have to watch. Although one of the things we're going to have people do is dress up. So I don't know, Bailey, if you're going to be participating. if you want to, because it is going to be all horror. Oh, she has a turquoise bathroom.
It's fate.
It's amazing. She said Bailey is not a horror person, but you're going to do your research. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, that leads into, because we did talk about everything pretty much that we want to talk about with Moonlight, or that I did, unless there was something you really just are dying to add in, Carla, because otherwise I'll go into my
Let me just quickly refer to my notes.
Okay. Well, while Carla is looking, just another plug that we are going to be starting our epic horror trivia. I'm plugging it way in advance because signups are going to start on August 1st. This is going to be a team event. So we're going to do teams of, at this point, it's looking just like teams of 2, but I might expand that to teams of 2 to 4. I will definitely let everybody know really soon, because we're going to have our first meeting about this. I mean, the podcast people, not everybody in the world. We're going to have our first meeting discussing this and discussing how this is going to go and different things. But we already have the genres that we're going to cover. So basically, it'll be a 10-week thing. So this is a long event. And every week for 10 weeks, we're going to do a live stream that will be basically just a trivia live stream. We're going to have guests on. I haven't reached out to a lot of these guests yet, so I'm hoping this is like in my...
We're going to have Christian Bale and Kevin Harrison Jr. There's Clooney's planning on popping by. I heard from Barry Watson's people. The zombie tiger will be there. The entire cast of Eurovision.
I think Carla would faint.
I would. I'd be so excited. Like, oh, hi guys. Hi.
The entire cast of Eurovision. Yeah, it's gonna be. No, but I do have people actually on the list going to start reaching out to. But I just want to also put it out. I just keep putting it out there because it's going to be there. It's going to be here before you know it. So I want people to keep an eye on that. And there'll be more information coming really soon in July. I'm going to be doing another promo video for it. But throwing it out there, if you are a podcaster that covers horror and you'd like to be on, I have some people that I will be reaching out to. But if you want to reach out to me first before I reach out to you, feel free to do that. You can email, DM me, however you want to do that. If you are a creator, if you're a horror creator, I'm talking everything. You make movies, you write, you're in it, you do fan art, you do posters, anything like that, and you would like to be on one of these 10 weeks episodes and be part of the hosting thing, like co-host with me, or if you have an item that you would want to potentially donate, or depending on how much it costs, I can buy it and put it in our prize goodie pack that we'll have at the end for the person who wins the whole thing, or the team that wins the whole thing. Reach out to us as well. I just want this to be as fun and as inclusive as possible. So I also want it to be a way for people to promote themselves as well. And the weeks we're going to be covering, And I haven't decided the order yet, but it's going to be zombies, werewolves, vampires, horror comedy, aliens, slashers, body horror. Um, I know I'm forgetting some. I'm sorry. I'm forgetting a bunch. But anyway, it's going to be a bunch of them, a lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that. And Carla, did you have a chance to browse through your notes?
Yeah, I had already said it, so never mind.
Okay. You already said everything?
Yeah, it was just the point about how Terrell Alvin McCrary pointedly wrote Juan as a drug dealer, specifically to subvert the connotations that, or the ideas that one would have coming into a film seeing a drug dealer, of the the machismo and the evil, I guess, the badness and everything, because there's more to one person that you could really see. And then Barry Jenkins carried that into the movie and the movie opens with that scene. And it's very important because not only does that subvert your expectations of what Juan is and who he is, it also sets you up to be constantly surprised by your expectations, because it also makes you think to yourself, wow, I really had really crappy preconceived notions of who these people were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's why it was so important to have. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for mentioning that. So, okay, well, we're gonna it's been another short episode.
I don't know what you mean.
Yes, Bailey says Barry Watson has to come to our horror thing. I mean, yes, he has
Naturally.
to be on one of the episodes. I'll have him be on the Supernatural one, which was one I missed. Not Supernatural, the TV show. Okay, I want to make that very clear. This is like horror films, not
the only thing Supernatural really has to do with horror at this point is how awful that ending was.
That's very, very true. Yeah, bite-sized podcast. The only podcast episode we have ever done that has been bite-sized was our special Christian Bale.
Yes. And only because you edited it too much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, not even my interviews aren't even bite-sized. So yes, exactly. Every time Carleg are on a podcast, it's the longest ep for a reason. Very, very true. Yes, that's very true.
Hey, the 2 eps from last week would like to have a word with you, but only those 2 episodes.
But only those 2 episodes. Hey, I got those down though. I got them cut down.
You did.
But anyway. Oh yeah, well the 3 episodes, because Army of the Dead, I still haven't.
Oh, that's
I don't
right.
know when that will ever come out. People, you just have to go rewatch the live stream because yeah. That one's over 3 hours. We were like, beat this, Zack Snyder. He's like, I
He'll
did
just see
with
it
my
as a
Justice
challenge.
League.
He's gonna see it as a challenge. Oh my god.
What have I done? Anyway, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and close out. So Carla, where can they find you and your wonderful your wonderful podcast? Are you okay?
I'm trying so hard not to laugh right now. I'm trying to be a serious podcaster.
They need to watch that for your fan art. That's very true, Bailey.
Yes. Yes, that's true. So I'm a very serious podcaster, and you can find the podcast that I have with my bestie Meg. It's called Bedwet or Behead. You can find us wherever you find fine, classy podcasts about, doing, marrying, and killing people. You can also find us on Twitter at bedwetbeheadpod, on Instagram at bed.wet.behead.pod, on Facebook, Bedwet or Behead podcast, and just look us up, check us out. We're a good time.
For a good time. Sorry. Okay, and this is Erin. And before I do where you can find me, and the podcast, not just me, but
I'll be watching you.
hey, that was really creepy part where they did that in the Lucifer musical. I just want to say,
Yeah, like why would you choose a song about stalking to talk about like parent-child relationships? What?
yeah, that was a little bit.
That's weird.
That was really creepy. Okay, so couple of things. Remember, we are nominated, so vote for us for Best TV Film Podcast for Quite the Thing Media Awards. That's the link. You can just type that in, or you can go to the show notes. It'll be there too. And then also next week's live stream is going to be about George Michael. So let us know your favorite George Michael song really quickly, Bailey, before I do my closeout. Just type in there in the comments if you have a favorite George Michael song. You're probably going to say you don't like George Michael. I'm just kidding. But no, we're going to talk about George Michael. That's going to be a lot of fun. We are also, Carla's going to return for that one. And we are also going to have Jessie from Sudden But Inevitable is going to be joining us as well. So
we love Jessie.
Yes, we do love Jessie. So Jessie will be joining us for that one. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for that one. So anyway, so I'll do my sorry. Where you can find me. Bailey, you can follow Bailey's TikTok. It's in the comments at BAWLEY_bug. Does Wham does count? Yes, because George Michael was part of Wham, so Wham does count. So while I'm doing my closeout, go ahead and put that in there, and then I'll mention it. But yes, Wham of course counts because George Michael's there. So yes. Okay, well, this is Erin. You can follow me on Twitter, where I'm still mourning the loss of Carla's Queer as Folk tweets. So I haven't been tweeting much from there because Carla's kind of breaking my heart these past couple of weeks. So it's been very difficult to go on that account because I just mourn the fact that I think it's because she's worried she's going to start liking Brian in season 2. So she's like, I'm just going to stop watching. I'm
afraid that if I catch up, that I'll end up signing myself up for the Queer as Folk episode, and then it'll end up being 4 hours long.
Wake Me Up Before You Go is Bailey's favorite from Wham.
That's a great song.
Yes, that is a good song. Yeah. See, I was wondering that. I was like, is she going to sign herself up for a Queer as Folk episode? Guess not. Guess she doesn't want to do that. Yeah, because it would be long, and it would also probably be a lot of fighting, and that would really...
It would only be fighting. It would just be like 3 hours of Erin and Ishel just hating me for my opinions on Brian. That's all it would be.
Yeah, I think anybody that's going to be on there loves Brian, so it'll be... Because that was fun. On our last Queer as Folk episode from last year, I was thinking somebody was not going to like Brian. I was like, I'm sure someone on the panel, but nope, everybody loved Brian. So
let me just put it this way. Brian does not put the boom boom into my heart.
Okay, anyway. So you can follow me on Twitter at eAprilBeauty. The E and the A and the B are capitalized. And you can, mourn with me the loss of Carla discovering my favorite show. Of course, I still haven't watched Eurovision. I know I have totally failed at my back here. My only excuse is this show. I know it's not a good excuse, but it's a good excuse, and I apologize. I know I'm horrible. I will do that. Maybe that's why she's not watching. That's why. She's giving me the look that yes, that's why. And you can follow the show, which is where I mainly tweet from. Hey, yay, I'm a Queer as Folk fan. Do you like Brian? If you don't, then it's okay, I guess.
It's not okay. You better love Brian. If you don't love Brian, though, we can totally be besties.
There's no response yet, so I'm assuming no. I know they're probably catching up because I know there's a delay and a lag. So I know I've got to learn to be patient about that. Of course, of course. See, Carla, how wrong you are.
You call it wrong. I call it enlightened.
What enlightened? Oh God.
That eye roll was so epic. That eye roll was so epic. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to like make a GIF just of that eye roll.
Well, we are going to be covering Queer as Folk again this year. It's not going to be a live stream. At least I don't think it is. If Carla joins, maybe I'll make it a live stream so you can see the battle live. Whoa. Anyway, you can follow the show on Twitter, which is where I do most of my tweeting, at Fandom Thing Pod. No, it's in that one. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/It's a Fandom Thing Pod. On Instagram at It's a Fandom Thing Pod. If you would like to participate in the horror event that I mean, as someone who will help with being on the panels, I do want people to dress up in theme for whatever that week's theme is. Doesn't mean you have to be a werewolf for the werewolf theme. You can be some character in the werewolf movie or something. Doesn't mean you have to be a vampire. Doesn't mean you have to be a zombie necessarily, but just in theme for that. If you're comfortable with that, you have to be comfortable being on YouTube, being live, which means there's lots of errors and mistakes that could happen, but you have to be comfortable with that. So please feel free to reach out to us at itsafandomthingpod@gmail.com. If you don't want to be on there, but you have an item you might want to donate or you might want to talk to me about and see if we want to put it in the prize thing, please feel free to reach out there as well. Okay. What? Sorry, I just got distracted. Carla. GIF. What? I didn't know you pronounced it like that.
It's the anti-GIF slander.
Oh, I say GIF too. See, Carla and I agree on that. Urla are one. When it comes
Urla,
to
see
GIF.
eye to eye.
Yeah.
Not on everything, but definitely on GIF.
Not on the
GIF.
Yeah. I mean, on the really important things when we
you know
disagree,
what,
I'm right and she's wrong.
Erin, I just want to tell you that that I may be late for the next recording simply because I'm going to go to the zoo and look at the giraffes. As you know, the giraffe is my favorite animal.
I say giraffe, but this recording, when we were talking about Moonlight, I was like, wow, this is going to be the most serious live stream we have ever done. And then it just
and then you forgot that I was on it.
Well, I also went on my thing of like, here's some movies you should watch. Here's the order you need to watch.
But this is the beauty of us recording together. Like
Urla
has fun.
Yes, it does. And I don't know, and hopefully I am pronouncing your name right. I apologize. I am terrible at pronouncing anything. Like I can't even say furniture. See, I can't even say furniture. I can't say mirror. I can't say mirror. Well, I can't say furniture. Yes, I cannot. People make fun of me all the time. Sometimes I'll say furniture. That's like furniture. So I apologize, but is it Paula or Paula? Is it pronounced? When you can't tell me, I'm sorry. I can't hear you. God, I'm sorry.
Did you have two White Claws?
No, I just had one came in Jack Margarita. I shouldn't put that up there. Like they're not sponsoring us. Neither is White Claws. And I'm not. Anyway, I apologize if I meant, but thank you for tuning in. I think this is the first time I've seen you in one of our live streams. Is that true? I think so. Yeah, I think so. So anyway, honestly, we were talking about serious stuff. I don't know if you've been watching the whole time, but or you've been in and out.
We're serious people.
Yeah, we're very serious people. We haven't even completely closed out yet. Anyway. Oh, I forgot to say what's on our next episode. Not our next live stream, because our next live stream is George Michael. People say it differently. I don't mind. Okay, well, thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you. But anyway, sorry, I got See, I get distracted sometimes with these live streams because I'm following comments. Like, oh yeah, Aaron, pay attention to what you're doing. You're not being a good host. But on our next episode, which will be on Friday, we are going to be talking about Brokeback Mountain. And Brokeback Mountain, right now, it's the 29th. If you're watching on here, if you're listening to this, sorry, it's already passed. But that's going to be on Netflix until the 31st of May. What were you thinking, Netflix? What in the world were you thinking?
Yeah, just dump it before Pride Month.
You take it off right before Pride starts, like exactly the day before. Whatever. That's so absolutely ludicrously stupid. Anyway, so if you haven't watched Brokeback Mountain, and if you need to rewatch, you have a couple of days to watch it and do, because of course we're going to spoil things. And I didn't really cry like I thought I would on this. I kind of teared up a lot, but I didn't really cry. But I probably will cry in Brokeback Mountain because we're going to talk about Heath Ledger. And I always cry when I talk about Heath Ledger because Heath Ledger was one of the best actors we had around. And we sadly lost Heath Ledger. So I will probably cry on that. And also, you know, I'll be talking about an experience watching this movie in the theater because I was actually living in Wichita when this movie came out. And it still blows my mind I ever lived in Wichita, but I lived there for a year. And it was a very interesting experience to watch this movie in a theater in a very conservative, you know, it seemed pretty conservative. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Area of the country. So anyway, so that will be our next episode. And then next week we will be doing a live stream talking about George Michael. And then we'll be talking about the show Orange is the New Black. And I'm very excited for all the stuff we're going to be talking about on Pride Month. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter and stop Asian hate. Oh, I guess I could have ended the broadcast. Sorry, this is how we end. We have a pause, and then so you're getting a little behind the scenes thing, which I haven't done before in one of these. So everybody, you're getting what happens. This is what happens when we end one of our recordings that are not live streams. I do that, I pause, and then I go, okay, thanks, everybody. And then we talk for another like 20 or 30 minutes about nothing.
Yes.
So I apologize. Okay, anyway. So you got a little sneak peek there of what happens. Usually I would have fit in broadcast. But anyway, thank you for the little views we got during this one. I really do appreciate. Thank you, Bailey, for always being such a great supporter. It means a lot to us indie podcast people. So thank you very much for that. And so I hope to see you I'm sure I'll see you on the next one because you're pretty incredible that way. So start listening to George Michael, everybody, to prep. So we'll see you next time. Bye.